Good evening, Jonathan, Raymond, and board members. I've been talking many years regarding the budget, and I think that's my key since I have an accounting degree. The parents could give you the more detail. As you know me, I always like to work together as a team. I've had the opportunity to talk to you guys individually, and I know you guys care and are very passionate in what you guys do. And this time, parents are reaching out to you guys. Listen, in the past 5 years, they closed $150 million in the past 6 years. Right now, we're only talking about 2.5. I'm not saying it's little, but it's manageable. I'm an accountant. We could work it out. Parents are reaching out to you guys. There's 3,600 children. It's going to have an impact, a drastic impact on the communities. Neighborhood schools, housings are going to suffer foreclosures, vandalisms. They're affected in low-income areas, as well as minorities and cultures are being impacted. Broken communities, as well as broken families. Another thing, the problem here is low enrollment. That's the key thing we should focus on. Low enrollment in this loses income, layoffs of teachers. Also, it has an impact on future years, as we could tell. It's $11.5 million. That's why I'm always reaching to the front. I really like Ms. Garcia's decision and inspiration in the fact of work together. We could raise the money. I know right now the problem is it's not being funded. It's costing us $336,000 in taxpayers' money on interest. We work together. Remember, the problem is it's not being funded. The state is not funding us. Okay, if the state's not funding us, let's work together with the parents here. They're all here today to work with you guys. Remember, parents are the ones that created the school system. Parents did the legislation to have the system in place. We could do it again. Now it's time for us to get emergency funding. I don't know. I come to these places because I want to speak out, and God knows who's listening on the other end and could say and reach out. We could help them by doing this. I think, right now it's 800, increase the threshold from 5,800 to maybe 8,000. Embrace us. We're here to help. We're a voice. We're united. We're not going to break down. But you need to reach out to us. And like I said, closures is not the solution. Proposition 30 brought in 15, then 20. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. Again, just a couple. As a parent, an advocate, and as an accountant, I see the numbers. Hopefully we'll see them together and work together. But please use the better practice to do the implementation because they weren't followed. And those are protocols or standard of care. Believe me, I know standards of care, Jason, because that's how my son got injured. But one of the things that I'm saying is closures are not a solution. I want my representative to vote no, Jeff. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Esparza, and I'm from Red Heart. I am not here, even though you don't close my school, I'm not here just for my children. I'm here for everyone else's children as well. And I'm going to explain who I am so that you guys know who you guys are up against, right? I am a 36-year-old brown woman that went to segregated schools, and I was cheated out of a proper education. I am now a Sac State student, an undergrad with a 3.9 and pursuing a PhD. And with this new knowledge and the experiences, my experiences and the experiences of my community, it allows me to see what's really going on here. And I'm not going to allow for this to happen. During the Bret Harte community meeting, it was me that brought up the Curtis Village project and the 527 homes that were going to be built. I know that many of you knew what was going on. And I specifically told Mr. Stationier that failed to tell me in the PTA meeting when I mentioned the Curtis Park Village, he failed to mention about the homes, and he acted like nothing was really going on. I know that you guys know what you guys didn't expect was for us to critically analyze all your plans. And what I seen and what I told you on that day was that your strategic plan 2010 to 2014 and as one parent said, your wrong sizing project had many inconsistencies. And it is too much of a coincidence because I know what's really going on is that your plan is to privatize education and to make our schools charter schools. Okay? It is too much. too much of a coincidence that one, the mayor has not made an appearance to try to save our schools, yet he's everywhere traveling different places to save the Kings. Two, that is not a coincidence that in 1 week he will have the state of the city and he's going to talk about great schools. Now, another thing, there's an ex-St. Hope leader that was hired as interim chief of staff at the Sac City Unified School District and is getting paid more than it calls for. It is not a coincidence. And it is our right. It is our right for free public education, quality education. It is our right. It is not okay for my child that if I move, I have to wait for a little ball to call my number. No, it sirs and ma'ams. It is our right. Thank you.
Superintendent Raymond and board members, my name is Steve Kreitz, and I'm a fifth grade teacher at Bret Harte, and I'm also very grateful for the fact that our school has been taken off the closure list. But that gratefulness is mixed with some just sadness over the fact that there are still a lot of people here tonight that are waiting anxiously to hear what your vote is for schools that are still on that closure list. And I've realized now, having attended a few board meetings, that board members must have really thick skin, and I'm sure the last couple of meetings it's gotten even thicker for you. But I just want to reiterate what I've been hearing and what you've been hearing so often is just that it's time to take a step back and regain the trust of the families and the community that send their children to our schools. And I know money is a huge issue, but still. And there's so many community services that are community organizations that are willing to step in and help out. It's been too much, too fast. You've seen that before. You've heard that before. But regain the trust of the greater Sacramento community in terms of the educational part of what goes on in our district, and it just will make it right. Thank you.
If our next five speakers can please line up: Mac Worthy, Darlene Anderson, Alan Dorey, Eric Sunderland, and Carol York.
Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Jamela Kirk, and I'm the office manager at Bret Harte Elementary. I have mixed emotions tonight. While I am a little excited about the fact that Bret Harte is off the list, I'm also still upset. This is not a win for anybody, and I encourage everyone to not take this lightly. It's not over. Please understand, James Marshall, Susan B. Anthony, and Bret Harte Elementary, they're not done with us. This is a fluke. There are other things coming. Those who are still on the list, you need to be made aware. There are plans that are in place. There are things called charters that are happening, and they're happening on a regular basis. I'm really curious to know, for Sac City, how many charter applications has the district accepted or has pending in lieu of school closures due to the charter deadline, which is February 28th? I'd like to have that question answered. I'd also be really curious to know about, for our school, we asked the question, when were you going to inform us that we were under-enrolled other than January 16th? I know you knew. I type 80 words a minute. There's no way, no how that board agenda got done Monday night when it was put up, because according to the Brown Act, you have to post your agenda 72 hours before a meeting. There's no way, no how, because I'm good, but not that good. It's not possible. Even with the print shop alone, you have to get them to the print shop at least 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time. So you knew, somebody knew, but no one said anything. And that's where I have a bone of contention with, and no one's paying attention. Follow the numbers. 1 + 1 still does not equal 3. Check your math.
My name is Mac Worthy. I'm a grandparent. I have 4 daughters graduating from the school district. I've been active since 1963. What we see is a corrupted city. Not Jonathan's problem. It's y'all's problem. Now, number 9.0, we didn't have one parent to speak to a finance department. Don't you see that same thing happen downtown? Your responsibility. They are organized to go there. Sac State or Sac City will give you a person. You have a woman here as a county to let them know what finance means. You are pimping them. You are pimping children. Yep. That's what you're doing. The same thing the mayor doing is pimping adults on to go charter school, privatize, and the property. What you're talking about building here, that can be government owned. That's socialism, people. Don't lose public education. Tell the parents the truth. You got a council over here. There are certain things they can do as long as the state controls that school by raising funds. Tell them the truth. I want to be appointed to that panel that's going to oversee. We're going to take one engineer. I've worked with the construction. I can cut off half of this and nail it up, and the other half is used. They can do the same thing. But no, those are going to become charter schools because Calvin Johnson's wife is involved. That's some of y'all's money. Some of y'all involved in that. You can lie now, you can lie later. Now, when you talk about 30, didn't Jarvis again file a suit against them? Unconstitutional. Tell the people the truth. People, I get those emails. I spent all day in the text. People over there, Sac State. But none of y'all there. Those are the people got the information. Tell the parents the truth. You're pimping. Wake up, people. You running things here at folks. Where are you going to get the families from those buildings you're going to build? Those apartments. When you are down in capacity here, how are you going to recruit people here to this city and you don't have no grade school? The first thing when a person going to buy a house, they want to know where's that grade school when they start their family. How can you do it? You're going to pimp them and keep lying?
Thank you, sir.
We would like to see
Thank you.
a grand jury investigation on your due process as a board member to the people in that neighborhood. Did you go? One lady up here already told you.
Thank you, sir.
Come. Hold on, Beef, for a minute. A second. You hold on. You didn't go out there. Just go out there. They are organized. Go out there and say, look, here is what Dr. Raymond is in. Give us your scenario on it. But you didn't because you knew something else.
Thank you, sir.
You knew that the mayor was pimping this town about the Kings. They told you. But believe me, I'm going to be there every Tuesday night.
Thank you, sir.
And the tax association will run him out of town.
Darlene Anderson. I find it rather ironic that I was here when they rushed through the closure of Sacramento High School, too. And that was a decision that had prior been made before we went through the process of coming to the public. And I'm understanding that the relationship of the City Planning Commission and prior board members about, what the plans were for Sacramento, perhaps. And now the reuse and rezoning of the city's master plan, all in the middle of 1 month. So quickly it has to happen. We're going to plan how we're going to reuse land. Quite frankly, that land was purchased by the homeowners who live around those areas. Those are the property taxes that were used to build the public school system in Sacramento. And this is the public that you have an intention on impacting. You don't really care, but this is a violation of the public trust. We trusted that you would look out for the interests of the people who lived in the neighborhoods whose tax dollars went to purchase those schools, to make it convenient for those families, and the reasons why they bought the homes in the area. And the district is saying, oh, right size. Where does a right size come into this picture at all? It doesn't come into the picture. Simply, I think there might be 30 students over at Freeport Elementary School right now. But there are students over there, and the school is still operating. But it closed, too. And so, the difficulty here is to really think that you really have the public's best interest at heart. I don't believe that. I believe that the decision has already been made. And I believe that the right sizing is just a gimmick. But none of the families are falling for the right size because it is the wrong size for them. Anytime you have to put a child at risk that is a kinder to crossing streets, major streets, and walking through neighborhoods where perverts are, it is a wrong size. And I think the district should take it off the ballot. I don't think it's something that should be done. I think there are other dollars that should be utilized when you're talking about closing schools.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson.
Good evening. My name is Eric Sunderland, and I appreciate the opportunity to address the board regarding this important decision. I have carefully reviewed all of the available materials on this matter prepared by your staff and consultants and believe that the evidence that serves as the foundation of your decision-making is flawed. There are three basic areas that are not addressed by the information presented to the public and your board that prevent a complete understanding of the consequences of the irretrievable abandonment of 7 elementary schools. I will summarize these three key points and provide the board's clerk with a written summary of my complete remarks for inclusion in this project's administrative record. Number 1, incomplete CEQA project description. While CEQA does not contain an expressed requirement for each document to contain a project description, the statutory points of analysis need to be supplemented with a project description for the analysis to make sense. Number 2, physical and aesthetic impacts are not described. Number 3, impacts to public services and safety. The proposed resolution does not identify how the abandoned campuses would be secured and policed. The proposed resolution is a rash set of actions that does not consider how abandoning 7 campuses will affect our neighborhoods, city, county. As public infrastructure, it must be carefully and thoughtfully decommissioned, not abandoned. The rush to close these schools also misses a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to partner with neighborhoods, public works professionals, to identify how these facilities can be repurposed to enhance rather than degrade our community. Lastly, the proposed actions are not exempt from CEQA. This summary provides substantial evidence that the proposed project will generate physical, aesthetic, and public safety impacts that must be considered in a revised CEQA initial study. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alan Dory, and I'm representing the bargaining unit, the Teamster bargaining unit here, the SPOMs, the plant managers. You're up here today and looking at a great group of people. They care about their kids, they're passionate, their kids should be proud of them to have parents that care about them that much. Every one of these people that have spoke out passionately are speaking out because it's a disgrace that they're in the spot that they're in. But it doesn't change the facts that if you change the schools to a different group of schools, you'll have another 1,000 people out here saying almost the same words with their children having their hopes dashed and parents being angry, and rightfully so. And if you don't take any action at all and you don't close any of these schools, what will you cut instead? Because guess what? A lot of these parents think that because Prop 30 passed, that somehow that gave us new funding. All that did is it avoided us from having another 15 days or 10 days taken away from their kids' school year. More cuts to their education. So that's the reality that we're facing and that you're facing tonight when you make a decision. So if we don't sit there and do something about this set of schools or a different set of schools, then you're going to be having a different choice where you lay off the rest of the custodians and the rest of the plant managers, and the kids won't have a restroom to go into. The kids won't have a campus that's safe. Kids won't have librarians, but they'll have a library that'll be closed up. They'll have restrooms that'll be closed up or with no cleanliness in it, no toilet paper. So they won't have school bus drivers to get their kids to school. And you'll have 1,000 people in here that night telling you how wrong that is. And they'll be right too. It's a disgrace that the state has got into, the financial situation that it has for schools, that we disrespect students that bad, that we disrespect our children's future, that we disrespect parents. But that is the state we're in. And I am urging you to act and to close the schools. I don't want to see it happen, but it's what needs to be done, or we have a different problem that's just as bad. Thank you.
Our next 5 comments are from Bernadette Austin, Connie Anderson, Nikki Malevsky, Jonathan Tran, and Joe Barnett.
I have information for you I'd like to give to you, but I don't know. Do I give it to you? My name is Carol York. I'm here to talk about the white elephant in the room and your ulterior motives for closing more public schools in order to make room for more charter schools. You say that they must be closed because of low enrollment. Conversely, you and I both know that you have widely exaggerated the under-enrollment numbers. We also know that you have short-circuited the usual decision-making. This is by Diane Ravitch. The average enrollment of charter schools is 372 compared to 478 in public schools. In the copies I have given you, the studies have shown that children do not re-enroll in districts where their schools have been closed. Other problems with charter school systems is that they take money from public schools. They do not have the same teacher qualifications, nor do they have to comply with the same stringent academic curricula as the public schools. Please do not forsake our children and privatize their education. Our children deserve the best education that money can buy, just like the public education that so many of our great leaders have had before them. The children of this great country should not be left to a lottery system. Every child in every city, in every county, in every state deserve the best education that we can give to them. Educating our children is not a choice or an option. They are our future. And as Americans, it is our duty to give our children a future. Because if they don't have a future, this country does not have a future. I have given you some information, and I demand that you read it before you convene and make a vote. For the sake of our children and the future of this great country, I implore you to keep our public schools open. Thank you.
Good evening, school board trustees. My name is Bernadette Austin, and I'm here from Domus Development. We're an infill mixed housing and mixed use and housing developer. We seek to create sustainable communities where residents can live, play, work, and get an education in close proximity to their homes. Last summer, our La Valentina development at 12th and D brought 56 elementary school-age children within walking distance of Washington Elementary. Our very own property management manager's children walk to and from the school every day. That's a dream for sustainable communities, especially in our central city. The speakers you've heard before me have been talking to you about funding. Let me show you the money. In 2010, we paid $187,500 in development impact fees that went straight to schools. That was for 81 development units. Our company and several others are working on developments in the central city that will add hundreds of homes over the next 5 years. And that represents both increased enrollment revenue as well as the development impact fees. Furthermore, these developments are slated to come online sooner than all of the subdivisions that were described in the three schools that you're proposing to take offline, or to remove from this coming offline list. Now is not the time to shutter downtown's only neighborhood school. Now is a time to support sustainable communities by preserving our amenities in the central city. Thank you.
Superintendent and board members, I'm Connie Anderson. You're considering closing 7 schools to save 0.5% of the budget? I think that that's the wrong budget priority. Neighborhood public schools are an American tradition. Every child deserves the opportunity to attend a neighborhood public school. My son attended our neighborhood schools, went off to 3 different colleges as far away as Argentina, but 10 years after high school, his lifelong closest friendships are still those he made in our public schools. And I want all kids to have this opportunity to form those types of friendships that are only available in neighborhood schools. But this closure proposal is not about saving money or about efficiency. It's about politics, because there's no other valid justification. It's about clearing out neighborhood schools so that corporations can move in and siphon off our public school funding. Corporations, their shareholders, their CEOs, and lobbyists such as Michelle Rhee want our tax money. That's the next step after these closures, isn't it, Mr. Raymond? All of you who are voting on this proposal We're watching you, how you're voting, especially those of you who do not represent the areas of closures. I don't come from the areas of the closures, but I'm specifically watching Mr. Hansen because I campaigned for and voted for Ellen Bell. And I walked almost all of Land Park for Ellen Bell, and I think she would have voted no on this proposal or at least have postponed it. So I hope you all do that.
Good evening, members of the board, President Cuneo, and Superintendent Raymond. I'm Nikki Malevsky, First Vice President of Sacramento City Teachers Association. This board is tasked with making very hard decisions tonight on school closures. We believe that you want to do what's right for the students, parents, and employees you were elected to serve. SETA has been supportive of cost-cutting measures like school closures in the past. We have known for quite some time that our district's declining enrollment and the parasitic growth of unregulated charter schools would eventually need to be addressed by tough decisions like the one before you tonight. When our representative council voted not to support this closure plan, it was not because we don't support the concept of cutting costs at our sites. It was because the superintendent's pet schools were skipped. Middle schools and high schools were not considered, and the parents and the employees who are part of these communities were not consulted in the creation of the list. That is why we're asking you to start this process over. And let's do it the right way, with everything on the table. That conversation should include the millions of dollars the district spends on programs and consultants with no oversight, and the high administrative costs that take resources away from our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki.
First off, I'd actually like to take the opportunity to thank the district staff who have worked long and hard. You have been placed in a very difficult situation to advocate for a plan that is extremely flawed. And we also recognize that you will be at the forefront of taking care of our children, so we thank you, and we will support you, and we work with you regardless of what happens with the decision today. Most of the folks in this room...
Your name, please.
I was going to introduce myself real quick. My bad. My name is Jonathan Tran. Some of you know me as a HIP organizer. In my day job, I serve as the California Policy and Programs Manager for the Southeast Asia Resource Action Center, also known as CRAC. We are a national nonprofit organization established to help Southeast Asian American refugees resettle here in the United States after being displaced from their countries as a result of war, genocide, and political oppression. As a national organization, we have seen the damaging effects of school closures on our communities all across the country. In Philadelphia, when schools were rushed to closure, we saw that student performance dropped. In what areas? In the areas where there are limited English proficient students, in low-income communities and underserved populations. The district has cited fiscal savings and closures as a remedy for structural deficits. Yet in closures in Kansas City, Atlanta, Chicago, and in Philadelphia, savings have been minimal. Beyond the irresponsible dysfunction of this policy, CRAC is most disappointed by the painful suppression of community input throughout this process. 2 nights ago, I attended a school site meeting at Bonheim Elementary School. At what level of sincerity do you give the parents and students of Bonheim of 2 days of consideration? With more time, would they have been part of the list of schools that you took off this evening? Finally, to the board members who have not stood up against this terrible process, we as Southeast Asian Americans are a fighting people, not because we are a people of war or of violence, but because we are a people who have been denied peace. Throughout this process, we have consistently offered to fight alongside you to work towards a shared solution. But instead of building consensus, you have chosen to barrel ahead with a flawed plan. Instead of the opportunity to uplift communities, you have again denied our communities peace. Thank you for your time. I sincerely ask you for a no vote. I believe you can do better. I believe we can do better. Because at the end of the day, I think the students, The families of Sacramento deserve better.
Our next five comments are from Elizabeth Mosby, Carrie Asbury, Laurie Funeroff, Alma Lopez, and Norma Jean Williamson.
Good evening. Hello. Najong. Thank you to the HIP community. I recently read a study out of Harvard about people who buy furniture in boxes and then assemble it themselves. And what they did was they studied how these people valued the furniture that they had assembled by themselves. And they found that the people overvalued it almost constantly. If there was a scratch in the furniture or a dent in it, they thought it had added to the personality and to the character of the furniture. But if they had seen it in a store catalog or in a store, they would have said they want a discount. This has a scratch or a dent. It has a name now. It's called the IKEA phenomena. Okay? The same thing had happened to a plan that human beings put together and dedicate a lot of time and effort into. We start to see things as the advantage of what we came up in our plan is overemphasized, overvalued, and the disadvantages, the mistakes, are undervalued. And I believe this has happened here. One, when you move a school out of a neighborhood, you're going to devalue the houses in that neighborhood. And this school district lives on real property taxes as well as other things. The people in the neighborhood, the kids in the neighborhood, they're going to be hurt by this. And I don't think you're seeing it. I don't think that you're catching that impact. And it's because it's hard to measure. But when a child is moved from a school that they're familiar with, that their brothers and sisters went to, that maybe their parents went to another school, it's negative. So I'm asking you to vote no on this, to be more inclusive in the next time you go around trying to do something. But right now, this building right now, I think would be very rentable. And maybe you could move all the offices that are in this building into the open spaces in other schools and rent this out and make some money on it. Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening, Board, Superintendent. Thank you for seeing me this evening, letting me speak. My name is Elizabeth Mosby. 40 years ago, I was one of these little girls that was here because I grew up in Sac City, and I went to Pacific, I went to Fernbake, and I went to Burbank. And now I'm a teacher for the district, and it's such a blessing for me to work with our children. I'm concerned with the closing of the schools because once you close them, you can't really get them back. But I also want to point out that the district is in danger because I do work for the district, and I appreciate the district. It helped me get to where I am now. Teachers helped me. The secret papers that I looked at this evening, which I received, were dated February 15th, 2013. There hasn't been full public disclosure. There hasn't been the process that's recommended by the state law. Also, it says that the last sentence says, while these effects may in some cases cause inconvenience, they do not cause a substantial adverse effect on human beings. There are environmental justice issues here with NEPA. And I would strongly encourage you to vote no, because what 6 or 7-year-old crossing Fruit Ridge Road to get to Hollywood Elementary School or to get to Ethel Phillips from Maple or C.P. Huntington districts, which one of those do you want hit by a car that's speeding to get to work that day? So I ask you to vote no, just to save yourselves money, to save yourselves lawsuits, and to help the families in the community. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Asbury, and I was a student at James Marshall Elementary. It's also where I got my very first teaching position about over a decade ago. But tonight I'm here as chair of the Democratic Party of Sacramento County, who voted unanimously in opposition of the closures based on the process, or rather lack thereof, that was had in deciding which schools would be closed. This proposal was put forward as an authoritative power play that silence the voices of the parents, students, teachers and staff, and community. It is not even a complete proposal. There is no plan on what to do with the closed school sites. There has been no approach to our legislative members about potential legislation to sell off school property. There's no plan on how to handle community blight caused by vacant and unattended schools. But there has been some visits by charter school companies at potential school closure sites. Of course, we already know that other closed schools have already turned into non-union charters. And with Prop 39 in place, we know they get first stabs at closed school sites. Turning closed school sites into non-union charters will not eliminate any proposed budget shortfalls. It actually will make them even worse. It only takes losing the ADA of 450 students to wipe out your alleged savings. Frankly, I'm astounded that you can sit here and say that you need to save less than 0.5% of your annual budget on the backs of nearly 4,000 of your children. We are turning the corner on some of the worst budget times we have seen in public education. The governor is putting forward a new funding formula that does things such as bump up 11% of funding for re-implementing reduced class size in K-3. How will that affect your capacity levels? Or eliminating categorical so you can move funds from restricted and unrestricted. These are things that haven't even been taken into consideration. The voters have spoken. They said invest in our schools. Prop 30 funds are here. We're already getting taxed on them. They are already coming in. The LAO's office just released today at 11 a.m. the runs for the districts. You haven't even gotten those numbers yet. How can you make a decision and move forward before you've even gathered all of the information? Vote no on this proposal. Follow the CDE's process. Work with the community and the stakeholders and follow a transparent process and get your budget numbers right. If you'd like more information, as was said earlier, March 5th, I have the flyers. You can get some real budget numbers there.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Norma Jean Williamson. I do not have any children, grandchildren, or great-grandchildren in this area. But I do live in this area. And I was sitting there eating a bowl of cornbread and beans, and something hit me right here and said, Norma Jean, get up and go. I did. Well, I'm here for the children and the parents. I was on the street at 11 years old, but look at me now. My backbone is not made of Jell-O. I am a fighter and a survivor. But I'm looking at 8 people. I'm not sure what you are. Because I feel, I don't know, but I feel you have already made up your mind. And it's not right. Not right. Because them babies that were on that little stool, did you listen to them? Did you hear them beg? Did you look at their face? Have you checked Megan's list? You say you are getting to it, but you haven't yet, and I know it. All right? Now up there, that bugs me. Welcome to all families. That dog don't hunt. No. That should be pity to all these families. And I know what you're going to say. You've had your turn. But you know what I'm going to say? The more you stir it, the more it stinks.
If our final 6 speakers can please come to the podium. Michael Viscuso, Manny Hernandez, Harold Fong, Devontae Williams, Devion Smith, and Paige Maines.
Superintendent Raymond, elected board members, and I'm especially glad to see Diana Rodriguez and Gustavo Arroyo, and community members, people of Sacramento. My name is Lori Fanaroff. I'm a retired teacher from this district. My daughter began school at Washington Elementary. Board Member Jay Hansen, I appreciate the work you've done in helping write legislation to protect the safety of our gay LGBT students. 12 years ago, I was the second sponsor of the Gay Straight Alliance on the Berkeley High School campus. Many in the Gay Straight Alliance and LGBT communities, myself included, are also part of other communities, of these communities, of this community right here, whose safety is at risk. As for money, and this is for all the board members, as for money to keep our schools open, last week I called the legislative director for Congressman Raul Grijalva, the co-chair of the Progressive, let me say that again, the co-chair of the Progressive Congressional Caucus. And I asked whether the budget for all, which they've written, could prevent public school closures. And the answer is yes. I was told the budget for all provides the funding needed by the states across the country. This frees up state funding for local K-12 education, enough to stop staff cuts and school closings for the next 10 years.
Thank you, ma'am.
Occupy Sacramento supports educating that the budget for all exists.
We could wrap it up, please.
Congressman Grijalva and Oakland Congresswoman Barbara Lee are members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the 76 elected representatives who wrote the budget for all.
Ma'am, if we could wrap it up.
Suddenly closing schools in our already at-risk, low-income communities is a recipe for violence and an assault on our communities. By your proposal to even consider closing 11 schools, you have created a state of emergency in the city of Sacramento. Vote no on all school closures.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Viscuso. I'm part of the Student Senate at Sacramento City College. I hold the Sustainability Chair. Currently, 97% of students that assess into Sacramento City College assess into Algebra 1 or lower. 73% of the same students assess into English 100 or lower. There's obviously a problem in the curriculums, obviously a bigger problem in the district as how they treat children's education. If you look at the history of democracy, you see that democracy flourishes with economic growth. But does it mean when economic hardship occurs that democracy should falter and waver? As a member of the Student Senate at Sacramento City College and in the democratic process, I would like to remind you all of your civic responsibility to all these lovely voices that you've heard tonight and to the voices that you represent. And I would encourage you to vote no, rethink your strategy, and listen to all these voices that you represent. Thank you.
My name is Devontae Williams. I go to School of Engineering and Science. I've been in student government since 7th grade. I'm in 11th grade now. I done debate teams. And I went to a school, Sequoia Elementary, and I was in 3rd grade, going past Campbell Soup, catching a light rail, a bus, or walking to school. That took me from 5:30 to 8 o'clock, and that's when school basically started. You expect kids younger than that to walk all the way across the street and farther than that to places like in Roseville or whatever. You literally gave schools a 24-hour notice. You're not worried at all about the children at these schools. Most children have problems as it is behind closed doors. You're just adding more to their shoulders. You're taking away both kids' value that they learn in communities they live in. You're taking away people's paycheck. They already paid very low incomes as it is. I'm pretty sure you were paid a lot to sit on your behinds all day, but if you were to take away your paychecks and move your kids halfway across the world, how would you feel? You're not thinking of kids at all when you're thinking about the money which can come from our suffering. If you take away our schools, we in the community will make sure your seat is and the board is taken.
My name is Davion Leon Smith, and I go to the School of Engineering and Sciences. Basically, what you're doing is you're robbing these children of their education, which is what they need in order to influence our future. Without them, we practically might as well just commit mass genocide. Okay, you're making these children younger than me, and I'm only 14, walk 1 to 2 miles. Even I wouldn't do that. You're making them walk 1 to 2 miles where anything can happen in like 5 minutes. The killing at the movie theater can prove that. That happened in less than 3. A 1 to 2 mile walk could take like 30 to 45 minutes. That anything can happen in that amount of time. Basically, what you're doing is you're gambling. You're gambling human lives. You're gambling these children's lives for what? Just a little bit of money? We all could literally just raise the money ourselves. We could literally raise the money and use it for the school. But apparently you made your choices, the wrong choices, before we even had a say in it. So what's the point in even closing down these schools? I thought this was America. Everybody has a right to speak. You pretty much just tried to take away that right.
My name is Paige Maines, and I'm a language, speech, and hearing specialist that works at Maple Elementary. The decision of right-sizing is directly correlated to the economic meltdown our country faces. Tough decisions need to happen. Tightening our belts to make ends meet is a reality. However, I disapprove about the manner in which you are making this decision. Moving is the 3rd most stressful event following death and divorce, according to the Employee Relocation Council and the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. People under the stress of moving often feel overwhelmed and on edge. However, if one is prepared and organized, it can go smoothly. The best advice is an organized move is a good move. Advanced planning and organization will make any move go smoother. The good news is that adversity is not new to educators, and they are excellent planners. The better news is principals have specialized training at planning and organization. However, given these 8 school communities, or 7, 3 months to move in surrounding sites is like creating a tsunami. Total chaos. I think it's actually started. Just moving one family from one town to another takes how much preparation? Mr. Raymond, you moved here from another state, and didn't that take your family a long time to move? I mean, a lot of planning. My family's moved before, and it took us a lot of planning to relocate efficiently. You are prescribing thousands of children and hundreds of employees to relocate in 3.5 months. We got March, April, May, and part of June. Here's our checklist. We have the enrollment implication of thousands of students, teacher relocation proceedings for hundreds of teachers, packing hundreds of rooms and unpacking hundreds of rooms, cleaning hundreds of rooms, inventory of materials for thousands of students, technical needs for hundreds of rooms, transportations for thousands of students, and special education needs for hundreds of students. I'm almost done. It's not a Band-Aid that just gets ripped off. This shouldn't be treated like a breakup or a divorce or a wound. It's a huge deal, and your decision to do 8 schools at once in 3.5 months to me is astonishing. Please give the principals and the teachers and the staff and the parents and the communities appropriate time to plan. Trust us so we can trust ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you.
10:25, Mr. President.
I move that we continue to 11:45.
Second. We have a motion to continue the meeting until 11:45 by Vice President Wu, second by Vice President Kennedy. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? We will continue the meeting till 11:45.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent and board members, I'm Harold Fong, and I'm a trustee in Area 7 of the Sacramento County Board of Education. I represent the area where 6 out of the 11 schools that you plan to close tonight, more than any one of your board members here. They are Maple, Clovis Huntington, Susan B. Anthony, Fruit Ridge, Mark Hopkins, and Clayton B. Wired. I want to make 3 points here. The first being the Sacramento County Board of Education did not force the Sacramento City Unified School District to close 11 schools. That is not true. It is the responsibility of this board here to produce and approve a balanced budget. How you get there is the decision that you make here. It is not a decision that the County Board of Education makes for you. The second point I'd like to make is a lot of people have said, and I just want to repeat it, 5 weeks is really too short of a period to make a decision. The best practices of closing schools recommended by the California Department of Ed is much longer than this. And kind of let me try to put this in perspective for you. A landlord would have to give more than 5 weeks to evict a tenant. A bank would have to give more than 5 weeks to remove the tenant of a place they're foreclosing on. This school board should give more than 5 weeks to evict the students out of their neighborhood schools. You know, it's about a process that involves all of your stakeholders, the parents, the community leaders, you know, the teachers and the students. And we talk about parent involvement. It's one of your core values. Let's allow the parents to be involved in the process. And when they do this, you come up with better decisions, and you also would have a buy-in on those decisions that are made. I'm sorry, I'm going to go over a little bit. My third point is that you have an opportunity tonight to make a decision that has far-reaching importance on the education of our kids. It's almost like a profile and courage moment. I hope you can do this, you know, ensuring that you have all the facts and involving all the stakeholders and make it in the best interest of the children. In conclusion, you know, schools are one of the foundations of our community. Closing a school has unintended consequences, and some of the people have spoke about this. It weakens the foundations of a community. You know, it makes a difference whether a neighborhood will continue to thrive or not. It also kind of crushes the hopes and aspirations of new immigrants and poor people that continuously believe that the system is stacked against them. You know, I ask for you to vote no tonight on closing the schools and to start over using the best practices that are available to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, and nice seeing you all. And
as one who's been in your chairs, I both thank you, and I also, and of course, my name is Manny Hernandez. I'm a former school board member and school board president. And so I want to say, again, thank you for your service. Most people don't realize not only how many hours go into the job, but they don't realize the very, very low pay that you go through. In other words, you get paid very little. You are the least appreciated of all the elected officials, and yet your burden, your hours of work is oftentimes greater than other people. So I want to just say thank you for what you do. This evening, on the topic as important as school closures, I believe it is vital that the school district consider the following factors. Number one, the effect on a community. Number two, whether it would have a discriminatory effect. 3, will it further erode district enrollment? Those are 3 key factors. I'm going to try to explain what I mean by each one. The first one, effect on a community. By that I mean, would it significantly affect the educational opportunities for the students and families? In other words, would it prevent children from attending school? Period. There are some kids, they are not middle-class kids like perhaps you may be or I am. They may not. They cannot be driven to their school by their parents. There may not be a bus. They physically may not be able to get to school, period. So, sometimes the lights go out. Would it, beyond getting to school, so the overall attendance, would it preclude after-school attendance, perhaps to receive homework help, to participate in enrichment activities? Number 2, in order to evaluate whether there's a discriminatory effect, it would be necessary to determine if some racial or ethnic groups are disproportionately affected. In other words, would this plan of the remaining 7 schools, would it either predominantly or almost exclusively hit those communities that are economically poor and racially of historically discriminated groups? 3, in the last 4 years, I've noticed that there has been a following pattern of school closures and then a change to a charter school. Let's give some examples, because other people may have forgotten or known them but haven't passed them along. In the Pocket Greenhaven area, Bear Flag Elementary School was closed and is now open as a charter school. That happened when I was a school board member. I actually couldn't vote on that because I lived too close, so I had as council may remember, I had to basically recuse myself. I could not vote on it. And now I can talk about it because it's after the fact. I actually believe that one was a fair closure because only 156 students were there, and the nearby school was so close, like 2 blocks away, that it didn't hurt the community. I know that because my grandchildren are attending that school. So sometimes school closures make sense, but it requires a lot of, if you will, as people have said, a lot of community involvement. Number 2, in the Pocket area, the Lisbon Elementary School was closed as a regular public school and is now open as the YPS Academy, another charter school. 3rd, in the Meadowview area, the Freeport Elementary School was closed as a regular school, and the site now houses the Capital Collegiate Elementary School. And those are just the ones that kind of came to mind. So, in conclusion, what I'm trying to say is please consider further factors. Don't make incorrect selections. And the final factor is money. Someone pointed out that in the realm of 400 students, if they leave the district rolls, this plan of saving $2.5 million evaporates. So if that's true, I would do a little further analysis. I would think, and I know if I had children, if you close my neighborhood school, I'm the only one who's driving, maybe I'm a male or female, and my wife has to stay home with the other children. For the sake of keeping those other children alive, I'm going to send my kids to a charter school, not to a regular public school. So thank you, board members.
Thank you. So At this point, we'll again make the announcement. If anyone has put in a card but might have missed their name being called, we'll give you one opportunity to come to the front.
Okay, testing. Yep, it's working. All right. My name's Lisa Romero. I'm the Vice President of Joseph Bonheim. And I wanted to come tonight to talk for my kids, Antonio and Angelina. I don't agree with the school closures because I believe, as we've said many times already, the public has not been known about it. This is why the California Department of Education has recommended a 7-month process, which I'd like to say I don't agree with that. I'd like it to be a little longer than 7 months. We're going to affect a lot of kids. A lot of things are going to change. And I want each one of you, I brought the American flag tonight because it stands behind you. And it stands for freedom and our freedom of choice. And we are the voice of our children when they cannot speak for themselves. I'm thinking about all the military and the veterans that fought for this country. And I believe they also had in mind for their children and grandchildren, free education, able to succeed, achieve their goals. I am one of many working parents involved in the PTA, volunteering at the school, done yard duty at the school, and so I've seen a lot of different avenues and different ways that programs in the schools help the children achieve their goals. Now, if we go and close them all down, we're forced to move them around, re-socialize. Their academics will go down, that I can guarantee. And I've worked really hard to keep my kids right at the level of performance. So we need to take that into consideration. So I ask you to vote no on this proposition because I think it needs a lot more thinking. There's a lot more involved here, not just safety, policing, trafficking, gang violence, you name it, it's there. And we need more parent involvement. This is what a community is. So we need to join together. And I challenge each one of you to think about it really long and hard because it's easy to fix something real quick and then you have all these other things that come undone after that. And how are we going to do that? And like we said before real quick is that if you need help with the money, I think there's a lot of people out here that be willing to help you find the money to keep our schools open. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to, start by thanking everyone. That I know this has been an emotional and difficult process, and it's an emotional, difficult topic. It is something as a board member. This is the second time I've gone through the process of closing schools, and it is the most gut-wrenching experience as a board member you can go through. I'd just like to recognize the people who've come out, the people who went out to the meetings, the people who have emailed myself and obviously my fellow board members, the phone calls that I've received over this whole entire time. I understand the place you come from and the things you say. I think at the end what makes, for myself, as a policymaker, the decision so difficult is the meritorious arguments that are put forth by people. And it's not a decision that is clean. It's not a decision that all the right is on one side. And that's what makes it so difficult. But for myself, and I want everyone to understand, I will take a step back to the process we went through last year. I was one of two board members last year to vote to close the schools that were up for closure. When I got elected, and ever since I've been elected, I've been very consistent that although a difficult decision, school closures are part of what needs to happen in our district. We have lost over 4,000 children in the elementary schools over the last decade. The fact of the matter is we have too many schools and not enough kids at this point in time. We've also suffered through some of the most devastating and impactful budget cuts that I've ever seen at any level in all of my time of service in the community, service with children in the juvenile justice system, in the child dependency system, and in the education system. It has been laid bare and has affected, to the detriment, in my opinion, the education of every single child in our district. So the way I approach school closures and how I've always approached school closures is that it's a systemic issue. It's an issue that we must resolve on a district-wide level. The difficulty comes in regard to the communities that we obviously impact in making those decisions. But it's my belief, and it has been my belief for the last 2 years, that systemically we are in an unsustainable situation. And we will continue to be in an unsustainable situation unless board action is taken. I've taken great pains to make sure and to discuss and to think about school closures, not as value judgments on anybody, not as a value judgment on a teacher or a principal or a student, because I know that it is not, and that is not how I see school closures. And so, because of the overarching issues that I see, the systemic problems that we have and that I've seen since I've come on the board, and I know there will be a robust debate up here about the wisdom of the recommendations and whether it should be approved or not. But at this point in time, because of what I think and feel and know, I am going to make the motion to approve the recommendations of the superintendent, and I will be very specific. I will make the motion to approve pulling James Marshall, Brett Hart, and Susan B. Anthony from consideration, to close C.B. Wire, C.P. Huntington, Fruit Ridge, Joseph Bonheim, Maple, Mark Hopkins, with the understanding that an alternative receiving school of Rosa Parks, a K-8, will be considered, and Washington. And I move to consider the matter in total, to consider the recommendation as a whole. And
second.
Member Arroyo.
Thank you, President Cuneo. I appreciate your concern, and I think that I have to acknowledge the fact that it is true. You have been very consistent on your perspective and what you think that the district and the board needs to contend with. I wanted to take an opportunity right now at the beginning of the dialogue because as I was trying to grapple with this information, and it's no secret, and I've made my opinions very clear where I stand on this particular proposal, I kind of worked to get an idea. I worked through visuals, and I think that I needed to do one thing first and foremost. I think that the superintendent, the district, has been very clear in their perspective as to how they define the issue. I think that they have done a very good job of presenting their argument, highlighting two main points, a fiscal and a capacity foundation. And I would like to say that I do not accept the premise under which that proposal is being based. And I created 2 visuals that help me understand what the issue is. And what I did is I created this chart with the assistance of a couple of friends to just give me a visual of what the real impact in the community is. And I'll give you a couple of explanations on what this is. These are all the 11 schools that have been proposed for closure. At this point, obviously, some of them have been removed. But nonetheless, and then the blue dot in the middle, it's a blue dot because we don't know what we're going to do with Mark Twain. So that's what that blue dot in the middle is. But nonetheless, I really don't want to delve into intent. I cannot, I don't know how to read minds and figure out what the intent of the superintendent is, if there's a hidden agenda or not. Some people speculate or not. The only thing that I can see is at a very clear visual. If anything, I see a pattern and it's kind of unsettling, and I think that people can come to their own conclusions. But I really don't like the fact that they're all concentrated in one area and that they disproportionately hit different, a specific community the hardest. We're talking about a community that is challenged in many different ways, I think, economically, transportation, and I think that the community has done a fabulous job of coming and speaking. I mean, we as board members can take an opinion and talk about it, but I think that it's the value of you coming up and telling us what that is very impacting as well. And I just really wanted to put this as a visual because to me it is very telling about what we're about to do as a board. The second issue that I wanted to highlight is that I really don't buy the premise of closures as a solution for financial stability for the district. I've made it clear when I first spoke on the proposal a couple of board meetings ago. And let me be very clear on this. And I need to be very fair to the superintendent and the rest of the board in the district. We do face very challenging financial times. And there are many hidden costs that you would not think exist. For example, benefits to our employees are continuously rising by a factor of millions per year. And so there are real pressures that we have to contend with. What I really wanted to highlight is that get a visual about what these closures really mean when in terms of savings. So we've talked about it. And Gail, if you can please put the second chart. Last year, we had a total revenue. I mean, I saw it through the audit that we got in January. We had a total revenue of $484 million. And mind you that, we will get an explanation probably that this is restricted and unrestricted and categoricals and every type of funding. But when we total all our revenues for 11-12, it's $484 million. Yet the savings, which at this point will be less because we have to mitigate certain aspects like transportation for some schools. And now the fact that we will be reducing the amount of schools that we'll be shutting down, it's really less than 1%. So we're really comparing the total revenue to the type of savings that we're going to get. I mean, I am not sure that this is necessarily the solution that we really need to go after. Yet, it's almost 10% of the entire school population that will be directly impacted. Directly, not indirectly. I mean, we will go into a higher percentage if we start talking about the receiving schools and every other impact. And Gail, if you can go back to the previous chart, that darker circle, it's half a mile circumference. A friend of mine who works in real estate thought, hey, the depreciation in value and so on and so forth is not necessarily right immediately to the house. So I said, okay, so that little broader, lighter area, it's 3/4 of a mile. So, this is not necessarily an exaggerated visual of the level of impact that we might incur into the community. And so I really wanted to put these two images, at least they help me get a perspective on what we're dealing with, and I hope that they will become a valuable tool not only for the community but also for the rest of the board members as they consider this decision. Another point that I wanted to make is that as the district compiled information about what capacity exists in these schools, I looked at the, and this is information in the California Department of Education, the last 15 years of enrollment at these schools, not a single year have these schools reached the level of capacity that the estimates are saying that they have a capacity for. So I have, for example, a copy for Joseph Bonheim. In 1996-97 was the highest enrollment year at 632. So do we have an issue with enrollment? Probably. Are all schools cut the same? No. Do we have issues of probably split classes? Yes, but then again, Mark Twain does not have split classes, and it's on the list for closures. Do we have issues of busing schools to other schools? Yes, these are very real issues that I think some board members and the superintendent want to make sure that we address. Where I differ with the plan is that I rather us, instead of putting a proposal to close the schools, come and tell us what the problem that you're really trying to address. Because when the argument was put forward that it was fiscal and the capacity issue, and then I kept on arguing that the real fiscal issue, this is not going to solve it, I then was told, well, it's not the issue of finances, it's that we need to be more efficient, or that there are split classes, or there's concapping. That seems to be more of a rationale behind the argument. So if it really is a problem, that should have been the first leg up. I mean, the first step forward. We have an issue with split classes. We have an issue of efficiency. We have an issue of concapping, which means, busing kids in a school to another school because we don't have room at one particular school. If you can believe that. And then that happens because we don't have enough teachers in a particular school. Students show up, we need to take them to another school, as I understand the issue. So, having said that, I think that we do have to face financial decisions. I think that it boils down to issues of priority. And I think that I really want to adhere to kids first. And so I want to vote on options that hurt the least. And if I enumerated every single dollar spent in this district, we can probably attach it to a particular benefit. Does every dollar have the same benefit? We can get into that dialogue. The only thing that I can assure you as I see these two graphs is that it's a disproportionate impact for a minimal amount of savings. I do have many more comments that I want to make, but at least I wanted to put this up front, and hopefully it enriches the dialogue and the conversation that we will have in this board. Thank you.
Appreciate the comments. Vice President Kennedy.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Arroyo. Everybody has said again and again, this is the most difficult decision you can make as a board member, and it is. I mean, although laying off hundreds of teachers is not exactly an easy decision either, and laying off counselors, laying off librarians, laying off custodians, laying off bus drivers, all of that which we've done in the last few years. I really don't look at one decision being worse than the other when they're all bad and horrible and hard to make. I don't look at this, and I've spoken to many people in the community about this, and I've been to the community meetings, not just those that were sponsored, but those that I was invited to one-on-one, more group-on-one. And I've said again and again, and I'm repeating myself, that I don't see this as simply a dollars and cents issue. And I don't speak for the board there. This is one board member this is my third time through closures. I see this just as important as saving the dollars that have been put forward. Just as important is the overall impact on our district, being able to better deliver services. I'm tired of going to campuses and hearing from principals that, our teachers don't want to clean up vomit. I'm tired of hearing from teachers, and I do all the time, that it's almost an impossible situation to teach in a split class. And we have a whole lot of split classes. I'm tired of not being able to, because we don't have the critical mass at enough campuses, deliver a lot of these services, music programs and some other services. And we need to, as a district, look at how we can deliver these services to all of our kids. I am willing to look at closing schools if I think that that the situation will be enhanced. And I'll get into in a bit, when other board members have had an opportunity to speak as well, some specifics before we vote, to talk with and ask questions, unless you want to do that now, Mr. President. Yeah, I'll let other people speak as well. But, I mean, Mr. Mendoza, two things that I took away from what you said this evening. I agree with one, I don't agree with the other. One is you said we don't care. And every single member up here and the superintendent, I'm convinced with all my heart, whether you agree with each one's position on this subject, cares. And so I don't want to belittle the positions of board members and community members and point fingers and say we don't care. I think that we do, and I appreciate the civility that this conversation has taken when it could have been a lot worse. The other thing, Mr. Mendoza, though, I do agree with you. We've woken people up. You're absolutely right. That's a good thing. When we started making budget cuts, and for three of us up here, right, that have been up here for going on our fifth year, and when it really started getting bad, these rooms were packed in overflow capacity every time we'd make cuts. And then the next year, there'd be a few less people. And then the next year, there'd be a few less people. And pretty soon, we're making drastic, severe budget cuts that are affecting all these students, and the room's almost empty. And that's a shame. And the reason this is important in this particular discussion is, yes, people have woken up. And that's good to empower our communities, to empower people, because I don't see this if we close schools. I don't see this as tonight it being the end. I don't see the transition period as being the end. A lot of work has to take place to make sure that if schools close, that at the end the district is stronger and we're delivering better educational opportunities to all of our students. So, please, if we do move forward with this, you have my commitment, and I'm sure of every other board member up here, to work to ensure that what we end up with is a better situation for all of our students. And I realize that's difficult to see at this moment. But there's a long process ahead, and we have to work together to see that we get there. Now, I have some specific questions, but I think I'll let the other board members have an opportunity.
Thank you, Vice President Kennedy. Do you have any other board member wishing to? Vice President Wu.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Vice President Kennedy. Thank you, Member Arroyo. You know, these last couple months have been really difficult, and I've spent time visiting schools, attending community closure meetings, talking with people, conducting briefings. And most importantly, I've been listening. And I've listened to impassioned speeches. I've heard pleas from teachers and parents and children. And I've reviewed budgets, and I've been reviewing budgets since I came on this board for the last couple of years. I listened to our partners. I heard that we were wasting money with contracts. I reviewed some of those contracts, and I've identified some waste of money. We've saved over $2 million, but it's not enough. And, you know, we have to keep going. And what I am fighting for today is not, I am fighting for the survival of this school district. I see that SCOE has their auditor out there. Every week, every meeting I attend, he sits there and he scowls at us. And the reason why is because we aren't brave enough to do what we need to do to pull this district back from its fiscal cliff. We are at the precipice. I hope that those of you who said that you can raise the money can raise that money before we close those schools in June, because that will certainly have an impact on my future decision making. But if I don't see that money, we have to save our district. Okay, so last year $484 million was our budget. 90% of that budget is for people. And we have gone to our partners. The teachers have given. Our union members have given. Everybody in the administration has given. All 7 of us up here have given back. We have picked all the low-hanging fruit. There are no more trees to pick from. We are at the precipice. I was hoping that we would get solutions. I was looking for alternatives. The biggest alternative, the most edifying alternative I heard is that you can help us raise money. Mayor Johnson has nothing to do with this school district. If he wants to raise money for the Sacramento Kings, he can raise his money for the Sacramento Kings. But if you can go to him and say you want that money for your Sacramento City Unified School District, beat him up, get that money over here, because we can use it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Wu. Okay. We have Vice President Kennedy once again.
Okay, at this time, if no other board members are...
Pritchett.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Board Member Pritchett.
Thank you, President Cuneo. Wow, what an emotional night. I just like to echo my thoughts from our last board meeting. And I may have not sat in previous board meetings, me being a new board member, but I know when something's wrong, and this plan is not right. I can feel it in my heart. I really feel that this plan is going to be detrimental to our district, and we are not going by our own motto, putting children first. I once again want to ask my board members to plead with you, please open your eyes and your ears. Listen to your public. Listen to what they're saying. Vote no.
Thank you, Board Member Pritchett. Board Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, President Cuneo, and other board members for speaking. And my message tonight is difficult to deliver. I want to ask the board, all my board colleagues, and just nod. Do you value diversity? Nod with me. Yes or no? Yes? Yes. It's consensus up here. We all value diversity. And this is where my message gets a little bit more difficult. Is because I don't want to be a board member that goes against the value of what we all just agreed up here. We value diversity. We just agreed on it. I met a man by the name of Jesus Hernandez. I was at the Planning Commission meeting fighting to not have a federal rehabilitation center be permitted into one of our very low-income neighborhoods. I believe Member Kennedy represents that area. And it's on Martin Luther King. And I just found out that through some of the power of my network, I got people organized, they went to the meeting, and tonight the issue is dead. The Planning Commission did not approve it. Good. Nonetheless, I increased the power of my network by doing that. And I met this man he was there to talk about sociology issues pertinent to the Sacramento region. This man
who went before the federal government to testify on the behalf of the predatory lending practices that took place in low-income minority neighborhoods. He's a professor of sociology at UC Davis. He wrote this 20-some-odd report that I hold here in my hands, and it's called Redlining Revisited, Mortgage Lending Patterns in Sacramento, 1930 to 2004. He did a lot of research in this report. And some of this stuff, and I'm not really certain that my board members even understand this, even are knowledgeable about this, because I wasn't. So I'm reading this, and it goes dating back to as far as the 1930s. Our non-white residents, meaning our ethnic minority community, have been impacted by the decisions made by governing bodies, straight from the federal government all the way to the local elected governing bodies. In this report, it clearly describes the historical pattern of movement of certain ethnic groups into areas of the city and the rural surrounding areas of Sacramento. Now, it's just happen chance that Member Arroyo had got somebody to develop his PowerPoint, his presentation with that map. Because if we were to bring that map back up, that map overlays almost exactly what this report is talking about. And to be specific, I'm going to quote to you from a couple of the things that were striking to me out of this report right here that was written by Dr. Jesus Hernandez, professor at UC Davis. This is a direct quote. As the first stage of downtown redevelopment neared completion, the percentage of non-whites in the West End dropped remarkably from 42.6% in 1950 to 5.4% in 1970. But in Oak Park, for example, a neighborhood without restrictive covenants located less than 3 miles southeast of the West End, the exact opposite occurred. In 1950, 6.5% of the neighborhood's residents were non-white. By 1970, non-whites made up 48% of Oak Park's residents. So we had a shift. We basically created a section of Sacramento that catered to one ethnic minority group, and then we moved all ethnic minorities into another section of Sacramento. This is what this report is telling us. By 1970s, the non-whites made up to 48% of Oak Park residents. While Oak Park experienced drastic changes to its population, census data show that the adjacent racially restricted neighborhoods remain consistently homogeneous to this date. Thus, the racially oriented organization of the city's social, political, and economic actions resulted in resettlements that reinforced racial segregation and relations of powerlessness that immobilized certain groups and constrained their free market participation. And that's not from the author of this report. It comes from an author by the last name of Iglesias that was in 2000 where he wrote that quote. I have the site data here if anyone is interested in that quote. These are not my words, but I feel as a Board of Education member, I'm here to help educate. I'm here to help educate my board members. Do the decisions we're about to make reflect the values that we all just agreed to? Look at our map. Look at the data. I'm not making those words up. It came from a report. It came from research. Are we going to continue this pattern? Today we can make a difference. Today we can be champions. Today we can make a choice to stand on the side of the community. They have spoken and they have woken. They're here. This is what we wanted. And we ask for their participation, and when we get it, are we going to ignore it? I don't want to create a us versus them situation. I believe in all people. And foolish me, I think of the song by John Lennon, Imagine. Imagine. You might say that I am a dreamer. You might say. But I'm not the only one. Because I don't know how many comments we had out here today and many more who didn't come forward. But they all have joined us. And you too, board, you can join us. Join those of us who oppose this proposal, because I can tell you that there is a group of parents right now, there's a group of community members out there right now that have signed documents to ask for a grand jury report. There is a group of parents and a group of community organizations right now that are looking at lawsuits. And for what amount of money do we want to save? It will be spent in lawsuits. Looking at the fiscal 16A report that I had requested several weeks ago, I see year after year we have overrun our legal budget by the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars every year because the district must defend itself against lawsuits. This decision that we will be making is purely an avoidable reason for a lawsuit. I am not a lawyer, but there are 3 board members who are. And I don't see that as a problem. I see that as a definite positive because they are able to look at this from the lens of the legal perspective. And they too can realize that there may be some potential here. And I have the confidence that one of these attorneys is going to make the decision to stand on the side of the community and is going to make the right decision to not further indebt our district by spending more money on legal costs than what is necessary. And should the decision to go forward with the school closures, this decision could even make the difference for individual board members garnering support for further political aspirations in the future. I don't want to see that. I like all my colleagues. And I wish them well. I wish them well. But I wish that they can join us. I want to see that true analysis of what social benefit we're going to get out of this and what social deficit we will get out of this. Nobody has brought forward that missing piece of analysis. Perhaps we don't have a staff member that is sophisticated in their knowledge to provide that to us. Speaking of low-hanging fruit, and I say this with a deep, heavy heart because I really, really like these people. But at this point, it's not a matter of personalities or anything like that. It is the matter of a chance to give a child a difference in their life. Yes. In this budget environment, we should be looking at low-hanging fruit. And I believe, Superintendent, and I'm really sorry. And I'm really sorry for this next suggestion that I'm going to make because I really like these people. But Superintendent, I believe there's still a couple of pieces of low-hanging fruit. It's called your Chief of Staff and your Chief of Communications. That's not millions. Sorry, it won't get us out of where we're at. But it'll save the chance for our children. Even if it's a couple of hundred children, it'll save those. I want to start to understand how we can build trust. When we say to the Mark Hopkins community, we're going to close your school, but then later we're going to think about it again. Why? I don't understand that. When it was a different school in a different area, we put a design team there. We didn't close their school and then come back and talk to them. We put a design team there. Why is Mark Hopkins being treated differently? Is it because of the map? Is it because of the historical pattern? Which is it? Why can't we put a design team there? Why are we confusing the community? That's harsh. They're for it. Let's put the design team there. Let's not confuse the community and tell them we don't want them and then turn around and say, just kidding. It hurts me. I'm a parent in this district. I have 2 children. They attend a school that is going to be impacted by school closures. Parents are frustrated. I am frustrated. I am a frustrated parent. You should be concerned, and you should be worried, and you should be working hard day and night to learn how to keep parents like Diana Rodriguez in the district. A parent like Diana Rodriguez who gives back to the community selflessly. Now, I don't sit on a site council or a PTA, but I sit on the Board of Education. And I can put my voice out there. Just like I heard many of the other parents out here saying that I don't have money, but I have time. And I have a voice. And I have feet. That's what I have too. Parents deserve a no vote. Teachers deserve a no vote. Custodians and bus drivers and classroom aides and faculty at these school sites deserve a no vote. But none more important than our students, who deserve a no vote. Don't let Diana Rodriguez and any other member of our community go shopping around anymore for schools, because that's what I'm doing. I am shopping for schools, ladies and gentlemen. Because if it's not good enough for my child, then it's not good enough for anybody else. Here's a solution. You ask for a solution? Member Wu, ask for a solution. I'll give you a solution. Let's divide the pain evenly between all 7 of us. Let's each create our own 7-Eleven committee in each area. Let's authentically engage our parents, our teachers, our community, our students who support and live in these communities. And let's tell them what the issue is. We have too many schools. Consolidate. I can do it in my area. Area 5 can do it, I told you. I told you in private, I'm telling you in public. I'm telling the public to stand on my side. I can do it. I'll give you 1 school. We can do this. Mr. Cuneo, you want to close schools? You want to right size? I can do it with you. You could do it too, Mr. Cuneo, in your area. I think each of us has something that we can give and put on the table. Because we all know our community's the best. We live in there. We were voted in by the population. They respect each and every one of us in our own manner. There's your solution. The community has asked for it. The community says, we understand, school district. Give us the opportunity. Let's not shut their voice again. Let's make decisions with the people, not for the people. Now I challenge you all, board members. Will you take the alternative solution? Or will you make a decision for the people and to the people and disrespect their time and their concern? And I don't call it emotion, by the way. This is not an emotional process. These parents are concerned. Let's get that right. Exactly. You're right. Will you stand on the side of concern? And will you do the right thing? And will you vote no and put children first like we truly want to? And will you stand on the side of diversity like you just all agreed to and say no to this proposal? And will you stand on the side of frustrated parents and keep us here in this district instead of voting with our feet and walking to another district? Say no, I urge you. I plead to you. I don't want to make the decisions that will further damage this community. I don't think you do either. Thank you.
Board Member Hanson.
Oh, there. See, look, I'm so new, I barely even know what button to push here. So let me say I've been here 7 or 8 weeks. I've been a resident of the district for many, many years, though. And I've seen Sac City Unified through the papers, through my neighbors, through my friends that have children here. And I haven't always heard the best things over the last many years. But the last few years, I've been hearing a lot of good things. So that made me want to participate and donate my time. And for those people who want to know, you know what, I'm just a regular person. You know, I went to K-12 public schools, grew up in California. You know, none of my parents went to college. They provided for me so I could go further. And, you know, the same thing that I care about you and your children, you know. But I've been surprised about some of the hateful comments I've received and emails. It's a surprise to me. I'm new to this whole process. I'm not a politician. And some of the things that I've gotten have been really, it's, you know, maybe I have more of a thin skin than I need to do this kind of business here, but I just have to be honest and say that. And some of the things that people said at the podium, most people, vast majority, very respectful, some very disrespectful. They weren't just disrespecting us, you're disrespecting other people that are here and the kids and everybody else. And I hope that everyone can be better role models to teach people how to communicate and how we can work through issues together, because that's what's important. For those who want to know how much money we make, $750 about every month. So what, you know, take it to zero. That's fine with me. You know, and that's not like we're getting big dollars or that's why we're here. Or someone was talking about all the zeros on our paycheck. You know, that doesn't pay for, you know, maybe it pays for half the travel expenses I spend and maybe a little bit more for like minimum wage or something if I counted all the hours that I've spent. You know, the dozens of meetings, the dozens of people I talked to, and I'm happy to do that. And I knew what came with this job, so it's a big responsibility. And well, you know, whatever. Anyone here is willing to step forward and to run for office, and I hope that all of you do. Run for one of our seats. If you think you can do a better job and you can convince the citizens, you should do it, and you have a responsibility to do that. So I think it's important. But let me also tell you some other things I think that are important. You know, I looked at the budget situation we have is very dire, and this is not going to solve it. And to me, this is not just a budget issue, it's an overcapacity issue. And everyone I've talked to, people, previous board members in particular, said they've been kicking the can down the road for some time. We've lost 20% of our students, but we have not shut down 20% of our capacity. I don't think we have to be that extreme, but I think we're a little over capacity. And when we don't right-size the district or whatever you want to call it, we're shortchanging students in other schools that have, you know, that should have more resources. And when more students are there, everybody has more resources. You know what the average custodian that we have at an elementary school right now? And I visited all the ones in my district. Half. One FTE, one full-time equivalent. You've got 300, 400 or more elementary school students in a site. You know, how much does it take to clean up after your kids in your house? And you've got, you know, a full-time parent there, hopefully. How about having half a custodian for a school of hundreds of people? We're shortchanging the schools that don't have enough people there. That's something that we have to think about, too. And I hope that all of you stay very involved. You know, I encourage you to go on the district website. I'm looking at it right now. Page 13 of the budget talks about the summary of how much money we're spending right now. 73%, actually 83% of our budget, 83% goes to pay our teachers, bus drivers, and custodians, including their health benefits. We budgeted that the health benefits are going to go up 10% next year. And anyone who's buying health insurance, you know how much they go up every year. If you're working for a company that provides it, you know how much they're going up every year. We've got big challenges in front of us, and we're going to need everyone to be involved in this. I mean, we can fill this room every couple months when we have a big issue, and everyone can come up and yell at us who want to, and people who want to be respectful, and the students who thank them very much for being, you know, coming up and participating in the process and learning something. We love that. I love that. You know, another 13% pays for administration, operations, and 3% books and supplies. There's the budget. Take a look at it and take a look and see, you know, how are you going to help us raise $10 million next year? If that's really what we have to do, can we really raise $10 million in here? Maybe. But I'll tell you what we're going to have to do. We're going to have a lot of tough decisions to make. You know, this isn't the end for us to have a full audience of people coming here concerned. So I hope you do stay involved in this, regardless of how this goes down tonight. It's important. And I also, I read the SACB editorial today, and they said that this is a process that's been in the work for 10 years. It's not something that just came out overnight. It may feel like that. And unfortunately, I think some people, if you're the short-term pain, long-term gain, if you're one of the people on the receiving end of a short-term pain, I don't blame you for being angry, for fighting for your kid, fighting for your school. But I do think that there's a long-term gain in this. This district has been around for 160 years. We're the oldest school district, I think, in the entire state of California. And I hope that we're here for another 160 years and then some. We also, students are our number one priority. Our number two priority are the people that are paying for it. And parents pay for 1/3 of the cost of our school district. 2/3 of the residents in our district don't have kids in the school, including someone like me and other people that are there. So you know what? Unless there's people like me voting to say yes on Prop 30, which I did, yes on Measure Q, which I did, yes on Measure R, like I do, yes on paying my property taxes to support children and the students, I gladly do that. I know it's the right thing to do. I know it's good for the community. I know it's good for all of us. But you have to have people like me on your side as well, helping pay for the students. If the parents think, or if the non-residents think that the school board is squandering money, are they going to vote yes on Prop 30 next time or Measure Q and R? No, they're not. And then we're really going to have problems here. So we have a fiduciary responsibility as well. So I hope everyone can join in that too and understand that we're all in this together. So there's a lot of responsibilities here. I've had a hard time deciding tonight. I've still got some decisions to be made. I'm listening to our fellow board members. It's important for me to hear that. It's important for me to hear from all of you. I've gone to these meetings. Like I said, I've been meeting with teachers and administrators and principals and parents, all that. And it does weigh on me very much. There's no doubt about it. It's a very difficult decision. Even if we close the schools that are proposed here, we're still going to have 46 elementary schools in this district. And you know what? If we looked at this map that's up there now and we put them on there, there's going to be a huge overlay there. 27 of the schools are in District 3, 4, and 5. And where the schools are, you got Jeff Cunha's got 4 elementary schools in his district. I have 7. Look at the numbers. Darrell has 3. Look at where the schools happen to be built down in South Sacramento. My previous life, I used to work in the construction industry. And when people build housing projects, they always plop a school right in the middle of it so they can sell the school to people. And that's why we have probably too many schools in some parts of the city when it was overdeveloped, or when it was developed and there's too many schools there. The developer throws the keys to the school district, walks away. We're all responsible for doing that. And what happens when people get older and don't have kids anymore? When the communities, age, there's a lot of things that happen there that are out of our control. But if we're not working together on it and participating together and being good stewards of the money, all those things are important. So, and I don't want to just keep, talking away, but I did want to just make a couple points. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Member Hanson. Vice President Kennedy.
Superintendent, I have a few clarification questions on your recommendation. Before we vote, I wanted to get some clarification. Mark Hopkins, you say consider alternative receiving school, and is that specifically, are you talking about Rosa Parks?
Yes, that's correct. Rosa Parks to become a K-8, which is just adjacent to Mark Hopkins, and majority of the children from Mark Hopkins right now feed into Rosa Parks.
And how would that process look? Because it says consider alternative. What's that mean exactly?
Well, my recommendation was that the board consider. The board would formally have to do a grade configuration to make Rosa Parks a K-8. We'd like to go and talk to the Rosa Parks community and then bring it back at a later board meeting in March for the board to take formal action to make Rosa Parks a K-8.
Okay. And the second is, and you and I have spoken at length on transportation. I mean, one of the reasons I had issues with transportation before was because that was always more nebulous. And we are saying that that the students at, for example, Maple Elementary, we're not sending those kids walking down Franklin Boulevard across Fruit Ridge. We're going to provide bus for those kids. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And in like schools, I just use that as an example. We're going to do the same in the other schools in which there's situations of safety.
Yes, that's correct. We've added more transportation routes at this point, which accounts for a reduction in what had been the projected savings, as well as crossing guards. And we're spending time right now working with our partners at the city and Sacramento Police Department at identifying the safe routes. And there'll need to be some infrastructure adjustments as well to accommodate those buses.
And those infrastructure adjustments, actually, a lot of the infrastructure were planned already, and we're in measures Q and R when it comes to safety anyway. So
that's correct. Yes.
All right. Bear with me just a couple more questions here. Okay. It says here that the transition process begins if this were to go forward tomorrow. What's that look like?
We want to begin to identify a transition team here at the district level. We want to identify and begin to appoint transition team members at the schools that would be that had been voted on to be closed, as well as those receiving schools. So that process begins immediately.
And I talked about Measure Q&R. A lot of people said we voted for Q&R, but as we know, we can't use Q&R to balance the budget. But we can use Q&R to make this transition more seamless and easier on a facilities standpoint, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And that's in the plans?
Yes, that is in the plans.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vice President Kennedy. Board Member Arroyo. Do you want to go first? You want her to go first? Sure. Okay. How about Board Member Pritchett?
Just quickly to touch on what Member Hansen was saying about the difficulty of closing schools, and I want to make it very clear that not one of these board members up here have said that we're against closing schools. Some of us are just to close the current, some of us are just opposed to the current plan. My questions are the after-school programs. I attended several of the community meetings, and there was lots of questions in regards to the after-school programs, in particular Washington that I attended. What will happen, 50% of their students attend an after-school program. What will happen to those kids that attend that after-school program? Will they then attend an after-school program at another school?
So the after-school programs, there's both 21st Century as well as the ACES program. One is federal, one is state. There are different requirements around those programs. Certain dollars do travel with children, so that after-school programs can be increased and expanded at the receiving schools, as well as working with the state on ensuring that we can, in fact, expand those programs. Transportation does get provided around after-school programs. So again, these are many of the things that get worked out once a decision is made and we begin the transition process. And that transition process, again, would begin this spring and continue into the summertime, so that all of these details can be finalized before school starts in September.
So 2 questions from that. I know Washington Elementary is a Head Start. You didn't mention that program. It would just automatically transition into one of the other programs you talked about?
Again, that's a preschool program. Mm-hmm. And, again, these are decisions that as a decision gets made to close the school, then we then look to transition those services into the receiving schools.
I may have gotten the name wrong of the after-school program, but I know it's not one of the ones that you mentioned.
So, yes, Head Start is not an after-school program.
Okay, then it was called something else, but it wasn't one of the ones that you mentioned. And then my second question is, if they are say this closure goes through and then they are at another school, are their parents then responsible for picking them up at another school, or do they have transportation that will take them at a certain time of day to their home, to back to their neighborhoods?
And if a student is transported in the morning, a student would be provided transportation in the afternoon.
Even after the after-school program?
Again, it depends. It depends on. Can I answer? Okay.
Answer.
So,
we all want to hear. So
again, it depends on the after-school program, and it depends upon what program is put in place and who some of those providers are. Again, these are some of the details and specifics that get worked out once it's determined which schools are closed. Children and families may choose to go through the open enrollment process. So it has to be done individually. It has to be done on a case-by-case basis, with assurances that children are well taken care of.
Well, this for sure is a definite problem in my mind, wondering, will they have to walk from an after-school program if they have a parent that may work 2 or 3 jobs? How will they get back to their neighborhoods? How safe is it? How far is it? The reason why I ask is also I have a teenager. I have a daughter that attends high school. And if she had to catch a bus, I think I've said this before, if she had to catch a bus every day to go to school, she'd be calling me every day saying, sorry, I can't go to school because I missed the bus, because that's what kids do. So that's my concern with the busing, especially with the after-school program. If they don't have a way to get from the after-school program, we're talking about elementary school, not high school students. My daughter could easily walk. If she missed school, I'd say, get your butt out there and walk. But we're talking about little tiny kids. We can't say, go walk to school 15 blocks in a bad neighborhood. So that's definitely something that I would want to look at if this goes through. Is the busing situation, especially with the after-school programs.
Again, I think that's part of the intricacies of this transportation effort. But what I'm saying is if we provide transportation to a child in the morning, we're going to make sure that child is able to get home. The child's simply not going to be left at school or left in the care of an after-school provider. I mean, that is part of the challenge. We'll talk a little bit later. One of the things that we learned as we looked at the home-to-school transportation issue was the issue around safe routes to schools. And in fact, we restored many transportation routes this year because of those concerns. And I think we have realized, which again, as we're in our budget planning process, that these kinds of transportation routes are essential in making sure that children get to and from school in this district in certain parts of this community, and those commitments and those resources will be there.
So are you saying that we currently, for example, in our current schools, if a child is bused in and they go to an after-school program, aren't their parents responsible for picking them up? We do not have a bus that will take them back home at that time, right?
Well, again, I don't know what specifics you might be referring to. We have a lot of after-school programs, and again, we're in a slightly different situation that we're emerging to. You're asking questions about children that are being moved because of a school closure, right? We're not operating under that situation right now.
Mr. President, I need to interrupt here because, according to our rules, we need to suspend our rules in order to continue. And we still have a number of things, even after this, on the agenda. So I move that we suspend our rules in order to extend the meeting time.
So what time?
Well, first we need to suspend the rules, and then we'll take a vote on that.
Okay. So all those in favor of suspending rules to continue this important discussion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One opposed. Abstentions? Okay. So we've suspended our rules.
I move that we continue to have this discussion and extend the meeting to 12:30.
That's
one.
All right. We're going to run into problems. All right, 12:30.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll move to continue this meeting until 12:30. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Please continue, Member Pritchett.
I think I'm finished asking my questions. My concern is that, if a child is sick, miss school, if there's a school emergency, I want to make sure that our parents can get to the students.
Thank you. Member Arroyo.
Thank you, President Cuneo. I have two questions of the superintendent. And one of them has to do with the capacity issue. If we know that students have never used schools to that capacity, why do we continue to use that capacity? Estimates, at least.
We wanted to find a criteria that could be consistently applied across all schools. And so we looked at what would be teachable spaces. And then once that was determined, we took the current class size configurations by contract, and that's how we used to determine what could be the potential maximum capacity. Again, it was used for all schools in a consistent way across the school district.
Okay, and I thank you for the answer. When I see it, it just looks like it just exaggerates the problem of capacity. Couple of things that I wanted to highlight. I wanted to mention some of the items, and some of them have been explained by members of the public and parents and students that came and made a point about how this is going to impact their lives and their schools. And but at least I wanted to rattle off at least what parents told me as far as what these impacts. And again, I'm not necessarily convinced that this configuration of how this plan was put together really merits the attention. I think that it looks arbitrary, and because of that, I'm really concerned how really it's going to impact certain communities. I really appreciate former member and former board president Manny Hernandez, who really highlighted a very, very few. There were few, but yet very key points on how this decision is going to impact communities. Among many of them are the loss of revenue ADA, especially for students that miss school. Students who miss school are likely to drop out. That just becomes part of the process, that if they're not at school, they disengage. Other parents have given me the information about their concerns for drop in property values, given the fact that they don't have children in the school, but nonetheless, it is going to impact them. We're already hit hard by the housing crisis, and this is just going to exacerbate the problem for certain neighborhoods even more. Schools close, property values drop, neighborhoods are less desirable, and therefore we lose more property tax revenue. And so it seems like it's more of a spiraling down situation here. Personally, there are two main items that I'm very concerned about, and that's the safety of children, and that issue has come up again and again. Specifically, though, I want to mention that, for example, we're talking about even considering in a week or two Mark Twain, and the schools that they're going to be split into. One of them is Peter Burnett. Well, if you're going to go to Peter Burnett, you have Fruit Ridge Boulevard, and I don't mean to dwell in the past, but the fact of the matter is it was not very recent that we had one of our students, a high school student at that, tragically killed by a moving vehicle along Fruit Ridge Boulevard. So these issues of concern are not generic. They are not made up, or they're not just gut feelings. I mean, we really lost a child very recently, and we're asking younger children yet to go through these extremely busy avenues. Another issue that was very evident by talking to some parents is the issue of safety and gangs. And gangs were brought up. The reality is that, and I don't know who has had this experience, and I know that I had in my growing up, is that you do not have to be in a gang in order to be impacted by it. Just by the mere fact of being in the wrong neighborhood. you just kind of, you're asking for it in the sense like, what are you doing here? You're getting harassed, you're getting bullied, and no fault of their own. And I think that that is a very real impact to the daily life of families and children. We don't have scatter plots. Are these really dangerous walkways for our children, given the fact that, if there are sex offenders through these communities that they're going to have to walk? It's been brought up. Another point that was very important that was brought to me by a parent is, if the child misses the bus, right, then they have to walk extra long. And unfortunately, for many families, this is not just endemic to Sac City Unified School District, but throughout the state, especially for low-income communities. It is very unfortunate, but schools are the only place that the children really get a decent meal. And so if they get to school late, they're going to be missing that breakfast hour. And so, that may register as a non-issue for us up here, but for the daily life for a child, to be hungry in the morning through lunch, and that's really an unfortunate reality, but it does happen where schools become the source of the main meals. And so for me, that's a huge issue. Not all schools are going to be provided transportation, so the real risk therein that they are going to be going through dangerous neighborhoods, busy trafficked avenues that are also dangerous, missing nutrition at their schools, and then the parent access to transportation in case of emergencies. Those are all esoteric, or they may be just vague items, but in the daily life of a parent that does not have transportation and they really have to go pick up their child, walking an hour, how are they going to transport? It just becomes a reality. I was at Bonheim, a community meeting, and most of the parents that I talked to, we walked across the street. We're down the block. Another parent was mentioning, he said, what happens is when kids walk regularly through that school or those streets, the neighbors know the kids, and they can pick up when something is not right, either kids that don't belong there or they see cars that don't belong there. And so what we're really doing by uprooting these communities is that we're really breaking the fabric of the safety of that neighborhood, because they have neighborhood watch groups, and neighbors do watch after neighbors' kids, and it's going to be very difficult to ask for that to happen when those schools are not there. I really would like to remind the superintendent, you gave a very impassionate speech some time ago about schools being the center of communities. You've been reminded about that. I want to remind you again, because in reality they are. I really want to plead again to the board is that I want to make sure that we make a decision that is not lack of cultural awareness, of really understanding what these communities live day in and day out. When they wake up, no car, no meal, this is their daily life, and we're just going to put another hurdle to them. Now, do I think that you really want to negatively impact? I don't think that you want to. I don't think that you have an ill intent on families or on children. I'm not accusing you of being or not caring about them. What I am trying to make a point is that these plans are not considering the true impact on the day-to-day lives of children and families and the livelihood of that community. Vice President Kennedy, I think that you are absolutely correct. We have a tough decision on deciding how best to meet the needs of those students on every campus, and I think that that's a point that President Cunha has been very keen on. How do we achieve economies of scale when we have, instead of 300 kids, we have 500. Now we can afford a nurse, or we can afford a librarian, or we can. I think that those are very valuable issues, and I don't think the community is necessarily opposed or they're against it. But I think that the way this plan stands right now ignores too many factors, too many realities, with hopeful ideas that maybe we can provide a better. Will they adapt? Yes, but at what expense? And I'm not sure that anyone on this dais would want to put their child through that particular circumstance. And so I really want to make sure that we make a decision not based on emotion. I think that Board Member Rodriguez was very clear on that. I don't think this is about emotion. We heard a lot of emotion from the community, but at least for me, it's about concern. It's about really making a choice that does not disproportionately impact communities in a way that puts children in danger. And so I really am pleading. I don't think that this is the right plan. I think that you have a lot of partners that are willing to work with the entire board on dealing with facilities issues. I think that if we look at the budget, I mean, it has been alluded before, but I mean, and Superintendent, if you can correct me, how much money did the district ended up the year with not being spent for the 11-12 cycle?
Again, I think if you look at our reserve, we have a mandatory reserve that we have to keep 2%. So that's in about the $8 million range. I could get Mr. Odegaard or other to be specific. Again, there are certain groups, and I know you said it earlier when you looked at that audit report, but it is significant. Nutrition funds can't be spent on things other than nutrition. Bond and building funds can't be spent on things other than building. Certain categorical dollars, whether they're Title I for children in poverty or for English language learners or for special education students, just can't be freed up and spent in any which way. So, we don't have massive reserves, and I think every budget report and audit report that you would see, and we can go through them, and they're all available online. You can look at them. I understand some of them are a bit complicated and they need explanation, but those are our explanations. We've had budget workshops. We've reported on our audit, but again, we're required to keep a minimum reserve. That's by the state. If we didn't have that reserve, we'd be negative, and I know our financial advisor from the county can report that. I mean, we go pretty much down to our reserve every year. That's been the trend in this district. Mr. Odegaard, would you like to add anything that I may have missed on that?
And for more specifics, I mean, if we get all the accounts that the district has, to which a certain amount of money was budgeted and then the budget was revised, there were accounts that were left with surpluses in them. School sites end up with a surplus, but if you tally all that money, I thought that I had seen in one of those reports that it was almost $20 million that the school district ended with unspent money that had been budgeted to different specific accounts. Can you confirm that with me?
I can't address what happened at the end of 11-12. At the first interim that I reported on, we projected an ending balance for the 12-13 year of $3.5 million. And also in 13-14, the budget year, we projected at the December 20th meeting that we would be $6 million shy of our required 2% reserve.
And I'm not talking reserves. I'm talking about when the budget was proposed and then it got revised through the year. When we had our October, unaudited actuals, right? And we see how much money was really left on each account. There were accounts with surpluses. I mean, I have a report right now of certain accounts that ended up with over $1 million, the state federal grant programs. I know that some of it is restricted and some of them is not. Yet we can be creative on how we use it. But there are accounts that are left with either thousands or hundreds or millions of dollars in these accounts. I'm not advocating that all this money needs to be dried and spent to the bone. I mean, we prepare and budget as best as possible. But what I'm trying to say is that some accounts, that we have in the district and with hundreds of thousands of dollars of unspent money. Isn't that correct?
We would have to look at each individual case that you're looking at. I think much of that is probably in the restricted categories. Our restricted revenues come in sporadically throughout the year.
I mean,
we oftentimes get them very late in the year, and the schools do not have the time to spend them down in the year that we get the funds. We can carry that over, and it's spent in the following year. So I suspect, but we would look at each individual case for you.
for example, for the Chief Accountability Office, for the 11-12 year, it ended up with almost $300,000 account balance. I mean, there may be a reason for that. What I'm saying is that not every account is spent down to the dry bone. I mean, it's not like some of these. The budget is a little bit more complicated than that. I get it, but my point is that as far as I saw, there were about $20 million that weren't unspent. Either because the money came too late, or it's carryover. And this is aside and apart from the reserves. These are monies that are given to specific accounts that they went through the year, and then at the end there was an account balance that was unused. And so we can neglect that money exists. I want to learn more how we can use that money because if we're talking about saving less than 1% in 11 closures, well, now 7. Now we're dropping to about $1 million in savings. When we have state and federal programs ending with a balance of $1 million with 85,000, or district operations with 348,000 account balance for 11-12. I mean, this is not chump change. We're talking about a fiscal cliff. We're talking about impacting 7-8 communities, uprooting them and asking them to do almost impossible on a daily basis. I think that, we can, figure out what else we can do or how more efficiently we can use those dollars.
Again, Member Arroyo, with all due respect, without knowing the specifics of whatever that report is that you have, whenever it was generated, I know that just from the categories that you rattled off, from my knowledge of the budget, state and federal programs, that's either Title I or the state version of Title I. It could have been a school improvement grant that is meant to be expended over 2 school years. The operations account, that could be some bond money there. So again, every time we've been asked a question to clarify on a budget matter or on a report that's been run or that's been generated by us or perhaps not by us, we're happy to provide the answers. But I can't or staff can't with limited knowledge and limited information and frankly no advance ability to provide the answers. We're doing the best we can, but we don't have the knowledge or the context by which by which your questions are being asked, so we can't answer.
And I understand that. I'm not asking you for an analysis of the entire budget on the spot. I'm just looking at account balances by account. The strategic plan initiatives, almost $1 million, $832,000 account balance for 11-12. And so I'm not asking you to account for every account or every penny. It's just, are you aware that some of these accounts are ending the year with that kind of surplus? Maybe can't be used. Maybe can. Are we 100% sure that every single account balance is necessarily money that could not be touched or that maybe we can repurpose? And then I'm not asking every department and every account balance to be drawn to the, if it didn't have to be spent, it didn't have to be spent. But does that mean that it opens up opportunities so that if we're talking about saving less than 1% of the budget, if we're talking about less than $2 million now, when we see account balances, at least I'm looking at account balances for 11-12. This is not the current year. This is what you should know, you should have on hand what you ended up with. This is when you close your books. This is what it shows that each account ended up with. So it's not a mystery. It's a mystery maybe to figure out. And please understand, I'm not seeking applause. I'm just really trying to get to the bottom because this is an extremely difficult decision. How do we close a budget deficit of $10 million, of which $1.5 million it's going to be secured through closing schools, which means impacting 7-8 communities, wholesale. So I hope you understand that I'm not seeking a particular answer right now because you may not have it, but I'm delivering a point that, with a budget this big, we need to kind of fine tune as much as we can. That's all I'm saying, especially when I am seeing account balances from accounts that ended the year last year with surpluses with over $1 million or into the hundreds of thousands. We should at least know. And I know that Title I monies are restricted money that cannot be spent in any which way. It's not general fund. But I know that Title I dollars are used to pay for teachers. Are Title I dollars used to pay for certain teachers? So they can. So I'm not saying that restricted dollars cannot be used or can be used in any which way, but I know that there's some flexibility with some of these dollars. And I am not sure. I, as a board member, am not sure, and I'm not sure that the community is sure that every single dollar is being spent in the most judicious manner. I know that you try. It's not a criticism. It's like, if we're going to ask the community to go through this kind of pain, the least we can do is to look them in the eye in the very end and say, we did our very, very level best. And when I see these accounts with this amount of monies left at the end of the year for last year, I'm wondering about that. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, President Cunha. Well, just because I'm a pack rat with these board meetings these days, I did bring the report, Superintendent, the fiscal 16A, that report that Member Arroyo was referencing to. So I don't know if you want to borrow mine and that would help you guys. No, it's not meant to be funny here. I want to talk about these issues because this is a very serious issue that we have here. We're affecting the lives of families. And we have to talk about this. We have to have the dialogue. It's important because it's important that we all should have had these reports up here with us today to talk about these if we had further questions. I asked for them. They're on the website. The public has them. They're available to everyone. And so, I see that there are schools that run in a negative year after year. There are schools that run in a surplus year after year. But no matter what, combining all the funds, general fund, 21, 09, we still had money left over on the table according to these reports. But I say that with a qualification because we don't include on these reports. What these reports don't have on there is the revenue. We have an adopted budget. We have a revised budget. But we don't have the revenue stream that is attached to each of these. So, to be fair, can you answer these questions? No, but can you look at a report and have a little bit more of an informed answer? Yes, you can. And that's all I want to say about, if you want to borrow these, we can have a dialogue right now. We can talk about it and answer some of the questions, or at least what you can with these reports that Arroyo had.
Again, we provided those reports to you. We explained them. I know you've had lots of conversations with Mr. Odegaard. I'd like Mr. Odegaard, and we have Mr. Denkevich, who has lots of experience working in multiple districts. I'd welcome them to come up and.
I'm not the one with the question. I want to make sure that a board member has their question answered.
Well, again, we're happy to provide it. I don't know what report he was referring to, but we're happy to take those reports which we provided you, which we've explained to you, and answer any questions that we possibly can tonight. And I'm happy to have staff do that and explain it as long as we can look at the report that you're referring to.
Yeah, I think that he was referring to. So if you want to take these for a minute, I ask my own questions, and then maybe...
I'm happy to have Mr. Odegaard come up, and he can take those reports. And
maybe give you an opportunity just to look at them, sidebar with Member Arroyo, and perhaps you can come forward and answer some of those questions. I thoroughly feel that if the question was put out there now it's in the public, and I've heard time and time again from the public now that there are questions that are going unanswered, and so we need to have answers. You know, I understand, Superintendent, that we're bringing back Tahoe Elementary in March with Mark Twain. What prevents us from bringing Mark Hopkins back in the March 7th meeting as opposed to going forward with the vote to close and then coming back with it? It's kind of a little backwards to me.
You know, it's up to the board. So, you know, I made a recommendation, and my recommendation is to move forward and proceed with the closure of Mark Hopkins, and then to proceed to look at creating a K-8 at Rosa Parks. It seems to me, and based upon my recommendation, is it achieves a savings by shutting down a facility, but keeping those children in a neighborhood and moving them into a program where you know, they can continue to be successful.
I'm failing to understand, and I need you to clarify this for me, because perhaps there's another person out there that's thinking like me. But not all the students can fit on the Rosa Parks facility. So you're still utilizing, I would assume that you're still planning to utilize the Mark Hopkins facility.
That's not correct.
Do you want to move the kids into the Rosa Parks?
The Rosa Parks facility does have the capacity, yes.
But it doesn't have what the requirements are needed, like a playground appropriate for children.
Again, as I responded to Member Kennedy, you know, if there are facility modifications that need to be done, they can be done.
It's not making sense now, because if you have a facility that sits right next door to it, that's got all of the appropriate requirements for children from K through 6, then why not just leave the children there instead of moving them onto another campus that has to be modified? Are we just into wanting to spend money on Measures Q and R now?
No, you know, I think it gets to the broader point that I think is perhaps being a little bit missed here, is that when you have a facility that's open, there are maintenance costs to that facility, there are utility costs to that facility, there's staff and personnel operating on that facility. There's a lot of costs that are ongoing costs, and that, I think, is the issue that we're trying to address with our structural deficit, which is, you know, how do we minimize these ongoing costs and ensure that these resources can be poured into programs and services with children at a particular school site.
But wouldn't we be spending more money? Because, okay, well, let me just explain to everyone. If we go, okay, Measures Q and R were passed. They were passed by the public to tell the Board of Education that they're okay with us to go out and seek loans to fund Measures Q and R, and then the taxpayers are paying for these loans. So wouldn't that just be irresponsible of us if we can't keep school sites open because of these facilities issues, and then we're going to move children into another facility that needs to be extremely modified to meet the requirements for children ages K through 6, when we already have a good working facility right next door to it? And we don't have to spend the money. It's kind of, you know, it doesn't make sense. It's an expenditure that we shouldn't even be entertaining at that point. I don't understand it. I mean, help me to understand why that makes sense. Help the community understand why that makes sense. Because it doesn't make sense still to me why we would want to move them over.
You know, I think, again, I provided an answer. You've been asking the question, and you've been providing the answer too. So
I don't know. Maybe you could say it a little different or something. I don't know. That's a wow. So, Superintendent, at one point you told us that you had already identified staff members who could be part of transition teams. And you said your teams could tolerate 11 school closures, and you've already identified these teams. And then when asked the question about what does the transition process look like, and you said tomorrow you'll be identifying teams. So I'm a little unclear about your response that we had in private, and now in public you're saying you need to identify these teams. Please don't take this. We're having a dialogue up here, and this is not meant to be hard. I'm not trying to catch the superintendent in anything. I'm seeking for clarification.
What I'm saying, Member Rodriguez, is again, it's presumptuous to identify transition teams before a board has taken action. Should the board take action to close schools, transition teams will be identified beginning tomorrow.
Well, I think you had already thought about it because you had to make a plan. I know you're a good businessman, so you had to make a plan. So I know you had to identify people. Going on the after-school programs, I'm very familiar with START, and I'm very familiar with Think Together programs. And as far as my knowledge goes, neither one of those programs provide after-school transportation. Is that correct?
That's correct at present.
Okay. And how about 4th R?
4th R does not provide transportation.
Okay. So the schools that the children are going to that have a Think Together program or a START program, and their parents work and don't get off of work until 5, can't get through their children by 5:30, what are they going to do? They're going to go home by themselves?
As I said in my response to Member Pritchett, these are the very issues that we are working on and as far as transportation. And what I've said and what my commitment is if we have a child that gets transported to a school that's based on one of these closures, and if they're participating in an after-school program, these are the very transportation issues we're going to have to address. And that's our commitment to these children and these families.
President Cunha, you told us that you wanted to have a 7-0 vote. Can you help us get to a 7-0 vote? Because with unanswered questions on this, I can't vote yes. If we still don't have a plan for transportation and for children after school, for working families, I can't vote yes. If we don't have an answer to some of our budget questions that Member Arroyo has asked, I can't vote yes. If it doesn't make sense to close a school next to a middle school, and then later have to modify the middle school, I can't vote for this. Can you help us, President Cunha? Where's your leadership here now? I'm asking for your help, President Cunha.
I've made clear all along, Member Rodriguez, each member has to vote with their conscience and with their heart and with what they believe is the best interest of students in mind. And I would ask nothing less of myself, and I'd ask nothing less of you, and I'd ask nothing less of each member up here.
President, I'm trying to work with your leadership and your desire to right-size this district. I have put forth a possible solution to getting to what your needs are and creating a win-win. They're not necessarily your win. They're not necessarily the win of the people, but it's the win of the district. And that we can get to the place where we're right-sizing, and we can get to the part where we're fair and we're just and we're respectful. But I need people to understand that this proposal is not the best proposal that we could think of. You have people here who are waiting. They've waited a long time. And they just want to be treated with respect. And then, in a couple of board meetings from now, you're going to come forward because I hear that there's a plan. You're going to come forward with us, asking us, the board, to approve loans on Measures Q and R when we already have $550 million in debt, bond debt, on the books. But we're going to go and we're going to ask for another $360 million in more debt. I think the least we could do right now is to work with everyone. I think what we could do to create what we want to and fund this Measures Q and R is to say, we need to rethink. We need to rethink about which facilities we can consolidate. I know Oak Ridge Elementary needs some major improvements. It's a very aged facility, and it was skipped over. It was skipped over on our list. And wouldn't Measures Q and R work for that? I'd be happy to do that. I'd be happy, because that one actually makes more sense. Because it's down the street from Father Keith B. Kenny, which, Member Kennedy, you were a very big part of making sure that that school was put there. And it's beautiful. It's a new campus. And it's a K through 8 school. And children will be there a longer time before they go off to high school. I think that's a better choice. That's a better analysis that could have been played out there. And it serves the same community. The same community. And then we're not asking too much of that community. And at the same time, while the children are at Father Keith B. Kenny, we can work to fix Oak Ridge Elementary. Update it. Use our Measures Q and R. I think the people who voted for Measures Q and R would actually agree. I think that we could agree that there's flaws in this proposal. I think that we can agree that there's just too many unanswered questions. Still. You know, I want to build. I want to improve. I want to do something right for the community. I really do. But let's do it smartly. That's all I ask. So, I don't think that Mark Hopkins is the community out there is being treated fairly. I think that the other school communities are being treated fairly. I think that just using one criteria about enrollment versus capacity is not fair. I don't understand the logic how we could want to move forward with this plan and not consider other things. Not consider the one example that I just gave you. Because clearly by the CDE Best Practices Guide, it says to skip a school over just because of a program is not appropriate. Because programs can be moved. And in that case, we're doing the right thing for the children, for the families, for the community, for the facility. Because I want to see that facility improve. We could do some things with that facility. We can make it just as good, or if not better, than Father Keith B. Kenny, which is a really nice facility. And that community deserves it. They need beautification in that area. Member Arroyo, I hope you're ready to get your questions asked and answered. lent my reports over, and so I'll yield my time to you.
I would just, I would note the time. I think we need to have a vote on this issue tonight. I don't want to cut off any board debate, but I think a vote needs to be had on this issue at some point tonight. So if someone wants to make a motion to extend the time, we can continue this debate. If people feel as though they've made salient and important comments and have felt like they have been heard, then we can have the vote right now. Member Hanson.
I'd move to extend the time till 1 a.m. If people would like to have the opportunity to continue talking, I'm not going to stand in the way of our board members having as full a discussion as they think they need to have. It's an important issue.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, so we have Board Member Hanson, I believe it was Board Member Rodriguez with the second to extend the time until 1 a.m. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We will continue. Board Member Rodriguez, I wasn't sure, were you continuing or were you going to cede the floor?
No, I just was asking, I'm concerned, I want Member Arroyo to have his questions asked and answered now that they have the reports and perhaps they sidebarred, but at least let people know what your decision is.
Thank you, Member Rodriguez. And I think that the question was just, and I don't need a full analysis as much as understanding if we had accounts with ending balances on the surplus. Unspent money on these accounts.
The likelihood that the final expenditure is going to match the budget that was developed at the beginning of the year is not likely. There are going to be variances in each and every one of the accounts. There are unforeseen things that happen throughout the year. The budget is adjusted to account for those. And at the end of the year, likely that there will be differences. I would, I guess, point out that this is not the right report to look at. This report gives you both restricted and unrestricted dollars. And what we are concerned about in keeping the district in a financial condition that will meet state standards, we are concerned with unrestricted dollars. The restricted dollars are sent to us for specific purposes. They carry over from year to year and must be spent on what the grantor of those monies, be it the federal government or the state government or a company that has given us grants, the money has to be spent specifically for what they tell us that they gave it to us for. And so I can't look at these reports and answer your question. There are reports that I can go back to if you have specific questions, and I would be very happy to do it. But this is not the right report to give you that answer.
So there's no way to know now that there are accounts that we finish with, like when we get our unaudited actuals in October, which is once we know when we close the fiscal year in June, and then we kind of go through the books, and then in October we get a report saying this is what the accounts ended up with. So we end up with no accounts with money in them. That
you get a report in June.
No, in October, the unaudited actuals.
Yes, you get a report in June and in October. In June, we are projecting what all of the actual expenditures will be. The report you get in October is what they actually were. Anytime you are dealing with projections, very unlikely you're going to come down to an exact dollar amount because, like I said, there are an infinite number of unknowns. The financial people project to the very best of their ability where the district is going to end up. But I have, in 20 years of being a CFO, I have never seen a budget line item come out to the exact dollar.
And obviously, I was not necessarily saying that it's going to back, because I know that there are grants that we did not know we were going to get. Things of that nature happen. What I was trying to get at is the fact that there are line items, accounts, that end with $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million. I remember last year I saw the audit actuals for school sites, and there were school sites that had a report that had a balance of almost $2 million. And I know Hiram Johnson was one of them, had almost a $2 million balance at the end of the year for the previous year. I'm not saying that all of them. I mean, there's some schools that are great. They end up with $20,000, $30,000, $50,000. Some of them end up with a few dollars left, which is great. I mean, the problem is not, was there a big balance or not? What I'm trying to get at is, if we are trying to say, we're going to have this type of decision tonight to close 7, 8 schools, have we really looked at every other option then to make sure that, if we're talking about saving $1.5 million, that this is the one and last resort? At least for me, let me make it clear. I'm trying to make sure that when we close these schools, it's the very last resort. There was no other option. And when I've seen some of these reports from last year, audit actuals, which kind of, they get the previous year, as I understand, and then they kind of go through what was committed, encumbered, expended, and it's not until October that we find out what was actually paid out and then what the account ended up really with, right? And some of these accounts are ending with substantial amounts of money. So I am not saying that there's anything nefarious about it or that there's anything illegal about it. I'm just trying to get to the point what else we can do to ensure that when we close these schools, we're really making the very last choice or last resort choice. That's what I'm trying to get at.
And if I could, I would offer that those accounts with significant dollar amounts are more than likely restricted accounts. That you're not going to find $1 million or $2 million in an unrestricted account at the end of the year.
Okay, I get it, but I mean, if it's a restricted account from federal grants that are Title I, which there are flexibility to use for teachers, if we use that money to pay some teachers, I mean, that usually has a trickle effect of freeing up general fund, right?
Let me defer to our expert in federal funds. But you cannot just use Title I dollars for any teacher.
I get that. I mean, look, prior to being on the board, I did education policy, and I toured different districts, and I met with meetings with superintendents, and part of these dialogues about how superintendents, and one of the superintendents was in Fresno, another one in Long Beach, and it was for an opportunity for us legislative staff to understand how the nuts and bolts worked of different school districts, and one of their complaints were restricted money sometimes have too many strings and we can use it, but believe me, we try to figure out every way to be creative about how to use it. So I'm not saying that there are no restrictions. What I'm saying is that we cannot also, at least I don't buy the idea that you're telling me it's restricted and therefore we can touch it when I know for a fact there are creative ways to use it. So I'm not saying in every way or that there is any bad faith from the district. All I'm trying to say is if we're going to be closing 7, 8 schools, is there anything else that we can do in the meantime or before we actually close them? And so when I see those account balances that include a significant amount of money, again, I want to make sure that we're making the best use of our money.
I think we're on opposite sides of the issue, obviously, but I understand the point. I do. Without getting too much into the weeds of the strict, the point is valid and it's meritorious. Student member Yi.
I just wanted to put in my 2 cents, and I don't want to sit here idly by and just listen and watch this all happen. I may be the youngest member on the board, and but I know in my heart when something isn't right. And with this proposal, there's a lack of clarity and communication, and the criteria on which the school closure proposal was made, I believe, should be at least revised to better fit the needs of families directly affected by the situation that may transcend. Logically and morally, the plan doesn't make sense to me, and I'm greatly concerned that this will generate greater long-term damages than solutions. This is much more than a fiscal issue, and we need more time and alternative choices.
Thank you, Board Member Yee. Board Member Wu.
Well, I think it's getting late, and we've all had our opportunity to speak. And call the question.
So we will have Vice President Wu calling to question. I will be very explicit about what is being called to question. I will just ask for a roll call vote as well. The action item is to approve, in essence, the superintendent's recommendations of today, which are the following: to pull James Marshall, Brett Hart, and Susan B. Anthony from consideration for closure, to close C.B. Wire, C.P. Huntington, Fruit Ridge, Joseph Bonheim, Maple, Mark Hopkins, and Washington, with the provision that Mark Hopkins will return at the next board meeting in regard to considering an alternative receiving school to be discussed by the board. Superintendent, can you call the roll?
Member Arroyo?
No.
President Cuneo?
Aye.
Member Hansen?
Aye.
Vice President Kennedy?
Aye.
Member Pritchett?
No.
Member Rodriguez?
Absolutely no.
Vice President Wu?
Aye.
Student Member Yee?
No.
The measure passes 4 votes to 3.
Item 9.3, resolution number 2735, the intention to terminate certificated employees due to a reduction of particular kinds of services. It is a conference and action item. 5-minute presentation, 5-minute discussion. Mr. Jess Cerna. Follow us to our cars. I parked back.
Would you like for me to proceed, President Cunha, or I can wait till the audience?
I guess we can wait a minute. Let's wait a minute. Okay, why don't we begin?
President Cunha, members of the board, Superintendent Raymond, I'd like to introduce Human Resources Director Concy McCarn. She'll be presenting to you the next 4 resolutions.
Hello, Board President, members of the board, Superintendent Raymond. Approval of Resolution 2735 before you with intention to terminate certificate employees due to the reduction of particular kinds of service. Staff recommends a reduction and/or elimination of particular kinds of services provided by certificated employees due to the uncertainty of the state's funding allocations. The Education Code provides the specific reasons and methods of layoff for certificated employees under Education Code 44949 and 44955. Reduction of a particular kinds of service, or PKS. The district has determined and identified particular kinds of services as presented on the exhibits in this attachment. The position reductions are needed to assist in addressing the district's budget shortfall. So we recommend approval of this resolution.
Do we have discussion, Board Member Wu, or Vice President Wu? Sorry.
Move conference to action.
Can I get a second? We got to move to conference action from Vice President Wu, second by Vice President Kennedy. I'm sorry, we have public comment.
Darlene Anderson.
We have two comments on 9.3 from Darlene Anderson and Danetta Garcia.
No.
Darlene Anderson. There's nothing like watching a done deal happen. It was a done deal before we even came to this. But laying off and getting rid of people is not going to end this district's responsibility to staff and employees. Simply, the long-term health care and the long-term care benefits that the district will still have to continue to pay is still going to be an impact on this district. District's not going to be able to slide itself away from those kind of past things. They've been committed to those benefits. And so it doesn't change the direction of what Sac City Unified School District Governing Board is going to be responsible for. And every one of these next agenda items that were on the board were pre-planned on the vote. The district had to vote in order to have a full agenda. So that just showed that the decision was made prior to coming. I was going to speak on each and every one, but when I thought about it, it was a done deal, and we were just waiting for you guys to make the one decision so that you can address the other four, because otherwise there'd be no agenda. There'd be no other items. And so it's just really sad to see that no matter what this district has gone through, it still has the same concept as it did 10 or 15 years ago. It is the people making decisions for a community that's not benefiting the community. This district is not serving the community's interests. Many children are failing this community. We are not producing people who are ready to work after high school. We're not even on that track. We got rid of all of the programs that would have went to job employment, because we got rid of a lot of the ROP programs and all those programs that would have trained individuals to work. And now we're just teaching to the test. And it's really rather sad, but I think that helps the district move towards privatization. And it's just sad. That's what I'm saying. We reached a sad day, but I'm sure you members who voted yes will be facing recall notices. Thank you.
It's not so sad not to see many people in their chairs right now, because they're probably consoling the community on taking a whole community and thumbing your nose at them. Mr. Cunha, I don't know you, other than seeing you here. I do find you a bit awesome in that your youth would not let you see through facts. I'm not so concerned with Mr. Raymond, because he too will move on. That's what he gets paid for. He'll move on. He'll go to another school district in another city, in another state, be paid again. And actually, Mr. Kennedy, I'm not surprised. A bit sad, but I'm not surprised. Because you pin your hopes on the voters that go to the polls, not the masses that don't. There was a time when I registered 10,000 people a year. Then I moved to New York and did it there, and I've come back because I moved too far. I need to do it again. I know how to raise money, big money, huge money, fast and quick. But that's not what you wanted. You wanted to close it down. To come back later to give us a reason why you want to close the next group down. And, you know, Mr. Henson, it is hot in the kitchen. And sometimes you get burned. But stay in the kitchen because eventually that meal you're trying to cook will come out okay. Don't be fearful of it. Don't wobble. Don't wane. Don't sit on the fence. I know you can be bigger. I ask all of you, including you, Mr. Wu, who said, come back in June. If you show us the money in June, we'll right this wrong we're going to create. But Mr. Wu, I've been fighting for people like you all my life because that's what happened. And we had the young Miss Katrina Yee who said, this isn't right. We had students, we had parents, we had everybody that said this wasn't right. And just because you made the vote work in your favor, it's still not right.
I appreciate
There may be some recalls. There may be some elections that don't go in your favor, but you won't. It won't bother you. Because at the end of the day, you'll say the same thing that Mr. Johnson said when the Asian community population said to him, where were you when we had our event?
I appreciate your
comment. And he
comments.
said, what more do you want from me? I married one of you. And that's what you're going to say.
Thank you, ma'am.
What more do you want from me?
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm doing my 20 and 30 hours. Give us more. Do it often.
Thank you, ma'am.
Do it early. Don't thank us when you insult us. Don't thank us when our voices voted you in to execute our voices. Don't thank us for failing to do that.
Very lenient. I'm requesting.
I thank you, Mr.
You
Jeff
abide by
Kuno,
our
for
time
requesting. I appreciate your request. I have nothing more to say other than to those that have failed us, you failed us big. And guess who else you failed? You failed yourself because you know you compromised your moral values. It's a sad day in the city of Sacramento.
Thank you.
It's a sad day for the children and parents that walked away tonight. And you know that.
Thank you.
I appreciate and value all of you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I wish you Godspeed.
Thank you, ma'am.
I wish you a safe journey and your thoughts home tonight. And I hope
It's all very unnecessary.
that when I am done, that I leave you with one value, and that is dig deep inside. Reach for something bigger than you. Maybe look forward, then look up next time.
We have a motion by Vice President Wu, a second by Vice President Kennedy to move from conference to action. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We're in action. You're opposed to this one? The intention to terminate? Okay, we have one opposed. We are now in action. Motion by Vice President Wu, second by Vice President Kennedy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed, Member Pritchett. Abstentions? Measure passes. 9.4.
9.4 is the resolution to determine criteria for deviation from terminating a certificated employee in order of seniority. With the approval of Resolution 2735, there is, in order to termination based upon the needs of the district and the students, the district has determined specific needs for personnel given the resolution. So staff recommendation is to approve Resolution 2736.
I will make a motion. Do we have any comments? Vice President Wu. I'll second. All in favor? Opposed? Member Pritchett? Abstentions? We're in action. I'll move the item.
Second.
Second by Vice President Wu. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Member Pritchett? Abstentions? It's been approved. 9.5.
Agenda item 9.5 is Resolution 2737, determination for tie-breaking criteria. With the approval of Resolution 2735, the Board of Education is required to determine the district needs should it become necessary to determine the order of termination for employees who first rendered paid service to the district in the same date. Staff recommends approval of Resolution 2737.
Board comment? Vice President Wu moves to conference action, second by Vice President Kennedy. All in favor? Opposed? Member Pritchett? Abstentions? We are in action. I will move the item.
Second.
Second by Vice President Wu. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Member Pritchett? Abstentions? Resolution passes. 9.6.
Resolution 9.6, agenda item 9.6, Resolution 2738, layoff notice, classified employees, reduction in force due to lack of funds and or lack of work. Based on a lack of work and or lack of funds, the district will require a reduced number of classified employee positions for the 13-14 school year. In addition, the district continues to face budget deficits. The staff recommendation is to approve Resolution 2738.
Board comment. Vice President Wu.
Move conference to action.
I will second. All in favor of moving from conference to action, say aye. Opposed? Member Pritchett? Abstentions? We are now in action. I will move the item.
Second.
Second by Vice President Wu. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed.
Opposed by Member Pritchett and Member Rodriguez. Abstentions? Item passes. Thank you. 10.0, business and financial information reports have been received. 11.0, future board meeting date and location, March 7, 2013, 4:30 p.m. closed session, 6:30 p.m. open session here at the Cerna Center at 5735 47th Avenue. Again, March 21st, 2013. Oh, I'm sorry.
I apologize, President Cunha. We have two comments on item 10.1.
10.1, okay.
Comments from Grace Trujillo and Mac Worthy.
Good morning, board members. I just wanted to say, I guess I've just been for the past 5 years, and I'll continue to be here. I think to support this is when we need to be united and stand together the most, especially in this difficult time and in budgets and what happened. I think for the last several years I've been saying to embrace, but I guess we still have to work on that, and I'm hoping that the parents still come back and work with everybody, and I think that's the key thing, working together, because that's united, we stand strong, working together, we have the same goal, and if we don't, our kids get affected, and the future is our kids. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Grace.
Mac Worthy. On this, from 9.3 to 9.6 and to 9.2, why would you all plan a concocted agenda? Why would you get all these people upset and slip these in because they was thinking about their school closure and you're laying off people? I admire you, young man. Somebody told me when you first run, I was acting, said you'll be all right. Now, when we talk about, he said accounts. Now, if you had done what I said you should do with your neighborhoods, the neighbors would have asked you the same thing he asked you. Why are these accounts got money left in them? Now, when money left in them, and you say earmark money, that money just don't lay there. The bank use that money, don't. You can get a resolution to deal with that money and utilize the interest that money made when it's left in the bank. Man over here, tell them the truth. You ain't telling these people the truth about money, earmark money. Now, when we look at the facts that are bonds and borrowing money, when they don't even know what the underwriter going to charge, you know somebody lying here. The same thing going to city, and when you see three people always, conversation going on when somebody over here trying to talk, I'm going to catch you in other places too. I'll be everywhere. I'm going to catch you in other places. I'm going to tell the people exactly what you are. You'll be on my turn. You should come here and try to work with these people to deal with key. I'm not afraid of it. I saw in folks integration, white folks made decisions, and we saw they do that. I know, like the young attorneys, the 3 attorneys. You can't practice no law here, brother. You may do it in the back room. Only the man over here can practice law here. You can raise hell in the back room on your issues and boast on your degrees, but you remember, these people are going to remember you. I'm going to still be here raising hell. I've been here since 1963.
Thank you very much, sir.
And the same thing went on then is going on now.
Thank you very much.
So wake up. You can whisper in that thing all you want, but you better wake up.
Thank you.
Because you got to walk these streets, and you're alive from the places you go in. There's some places I say now, you better take the police with you.
So I was saying on item 11.0, we have a March 21st, 2013, 4:30 p.m. closed session, 6:30 p.m. Open session here at the Cernus Center. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Oh, shouldn't we let board member?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. We have a motion to adjourn by student board member Yee, a second by Vice President Wu. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We are adjourned.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to make sure. When do you want to bring it up? That early spring?
It'll be in school. Good night, Gustavo.